Warning, the following podcast contains adult language, themes, and situations. Also, the film we're about to talk about is going to be spoiled thoroughly. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy this show.
How can you possibly improve upon an amazing performance by Nicolas Cage playing a weatherman stuck in a downward spiral of self-loathing and shame? By pelting the poor bastard with fast food at every turn, that's how. So come along with us as we get meteorological, breaking down The Weatherman.
Okay, let's run.
I'm like a prickly pear. What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole.
Porker, how'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
Hey, have you ever been dragged to the sidewalk and beat until you pissed blood?
Welcome to One Cage at a Time, the show where we break down every single Nicolas Cage movie, one film at a time. Here are your hosts, Patrick, Vince, and Nigel.
David Spritz is a local Chicago TV weatherman who has won the lottery at life. But despite his success, he feels constant shame, thanks in part to the pressure to live up to his Pulitzer Prize winning father and his rapidly deteriorating family life.
Let's see who's joining Nick on this adventure.
The Weatherman features the legendary Michael Caine, Hope Davis, future warboy Nicholas Hoult, and of course, the master forecaster himself, Academy Award winning and actor extraordinaire, Nicolas Kim Coppola, better known as Nicolas Cage.
Woo! This is himself.
I gotta say,
Lord has come.
the Lord has come. I have to say, they could not have picked the two worst British actors to be in this film. Nicholas Hoult and Michael Caine could not keep their accents.
Yeah. Especially Michael Caine. Holy crap, dude.
Michael Caine was like, I don't get it. You could have just had him stay an English guy. It doesn't really matter.
I know, it didn't matter. It would have actually made a little more sense.
We'll get into it when we do the breakdown, but at one point...
Actually, it would have made a lot more sense.
Well, at one point he says that he's a national treasure, that he was called a national treasure. National treasure. And that he had a recurring racquetball game with Jimmy Carter. So I guess he had to be American. I just don't know why they picked Michael Caine.
Right.
He's that fatherly figure.
You couldn't have picked another older American actor that would have done it.
I guess he had that presence,
Yeah. He did, but it was just totally distracting. Just do one or the other. Pick Michael Caine and let him do his English accent, or pick an American actor to play an American guy.
Let's dive into the nitty-gritty.
As always, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so make sure you go watch it unless you hate independent films that are slow and are similar to Coldplay.
Some might say they insist on
film versions of Coldplay, as some people say. The Weatherman was released October 28th, 2005, with a budget of $22 million. Only made $19 million back at the box office. So this is 7 for 7, I believe. We're doing 7 movies, right?
This is our 7th.
So 7 straight box office bombs, which I've started tracking it. We'll get to that when we get to the trackers. But 7 straight bombs.
That's crazy.
This was directed, of course, by Gore Verbinski, who is best known for directing the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Among other things, he's got a lot of different credits to his name. Rango, of course. He did that terrible Lone Ranger movie. The Ring, the American remake of the Japanese version of The Ring.
Oh, he did. That's right. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. So he's no stranger to big budget movies, but this is actually, we'll get into it, but this is the lowest budget movie he's ever done, which $22 million is not a small budget.
No, it's not.
But
I'm assuming a large chunk of that went to Nicolas Cage and
I'm sure
Michael Caine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Runtime's 102 minutes, so it wasn't quite the slog as the last episode of Bringing Out the Dead. This was written by Steve Conrad, who actually said that he got the idea for the movie from an incident that happened when he was a kid. He and his brothers were in the car, and they had, I think he said Arby's or something, and they saw the weatherman doing a remote on the street, and they decided to chuck a soda at him, and it just triggered a thought in his head of like, if that was like the lead anchor man, would we have had that instinct to chuck soda at this poor guy? Like, what is it about the weatherman that just doesn't elicit any respect? And that's where the whole idea of this movie came from. Steve Conrad also wrote one of my favorite movies, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the remake, the Ben Stiller remake that nobody seems to like but me. But I really love that movie. Really?
Yeah. I thought they did a really good job with it. I wasn't expecting to like it, but I found it very charming.
Yeah, same with this
movie.
It
sounded like Nigel said it was like a Nickelback song. Enjoyable at times, but you felt disgusting when you finished.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But
please don't watch it. Please don't.
I will say though, this does seem like the script that a teenager would come up with.
He wasn't a teenager when he wrote it. Whatever.
The premise just seemed like something a teenager would come up with.
Bastard. This is going to be our most divided film to date so far. We'll get into it, but well, let's just say we all had very different opinions of this film. The music, of course, was done by the legendary Hans Zimmer, because, of course, if you have Hans Zimmer on your Pirates of the Caribbean movies, you can be like, hey, Hans, come over and score this movie about a weatherman.
There goes another $5 million in the budget.
Yeah.
That was a very weird,
2005 Hans Zimmer was not as prolific and huge as he is now, but he probably got a pretty good chunk of change.
I just looked it up. So his net worth is actually more than Gore Verbinski's right now.
Oh, I believe it, dude.
That makes sense. Yeah,
$200 million. Gore Verbinski's 130.
Yeah, dude. After this, he went right into like Batman. He continued the Pirates movies. Man, still he just hit a stride after 2005
Yeah, he dumped Gore Verbinski for Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan. Yeah. You make horrible movies that are like Coldplay. I don't know if that's what he sounds like.
I don't either. I'm just going to imagine he sounds like Werner Herzog, because it'd be funny.
He does kind of sound like Werner Herzog, yeah.
Does he?
Not quite as guttural and evil sounding. But
awesome.
Werner Herzog sounds the way that I picture the bad guy from Ghostbusters 2. The way he should sound.
Yes. 100% agree.
This was shot by Pheedon. I don't know how the hell to say it. It's Phedon. Pheedon Papa Michael.
Pheedon Papa Michael.
Papa Michael. Who has some pretty crazy, all over the place credits. Cool Runnings, Biodome. So then he started working with Alexander Payne, which actually makes a lot of sense because this movie really felt like an Alexander Payne movie. Alexander Payne, for the one person here who never watches those types of movies and hates those movies for no good reason. He did About Schmidt. He did Sideways, which is such a freaking great movie. The Descendants, which is another great movie. Nebraska, which he was actually nominated for Best Cinematography for, even though that movie was shot black and white, which is kind of weird. But also hooked up with Judd Apatow and did This Is 40. Just recently did The Trial of the Chicago 7, so he's done a lot. And apparently he's going to be filming Indiana Jones 5.
Wow.
So, yeah, he's prolific as well. Just like us, the critics were pretty torn on this movie. 59% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is substantially lower than Bringing Out the Dead, which was at like a 70 or 72, I forget. But 59%, 6.1 out of 10 out of 136 reviews, which doesn't surprise me based on the conversations that we've had back and forth, especially Nigel railing against this film in his ways. Metacritic score is about the same, 61%, and the audience score, surprisingly, is 56%. So the audience has actually given this movie a worse rating than the critics did, which is surprising to me. I feel like maybe I watched this movie in a bubble. The first time I saw it, it was when it first came out, it was in the new release section, and it looked interesting. That used to be how things worked. Is I would go to the new release section, something new would come out, and I'd be like, oh, Nic Cage, oh, this looks interesting, and then I'd read the synopsis and then I'd rent it, but that never happens anymore.
How about a Coppola quick facts?
This, like I said, is Gore Verbinski's lowest budget movie, but it would have been much lower if he would have followed Paramount Pictures' suggestions. They wanted them to shoot the entire movie in Canada and fake Chicago, so probably up in Toronto or something like that. But both Gore Verbinski and Nicolas Cage insisted that it be shot in Chicago, in probably a multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking the river.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is probably another big chunk of the
just in general,
budget.
I think shooting on location in Chicago cannot be cheap.
Yeah, not at all. While shooting the movie, they shot the whole movie in February, which seems like a bad time to be in Chicago. But Verbinski was actually surprised that the weather was pretty warm throughout the entire production, and they didn't have any snow whatsoever for any of the shots. So every bit of snow that you see in this movie, which is the entire movie, is shot in winter with like full scenes of expansive streets in Chicago. All of that snow had to be put there. So it's all fake snow. Well, their version of fake snow, which is actually real snow mixed with potato shavings or whatever the hell they do now. So the production designers had to recreate snow from scratch for every single scene, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
Nicolas Cage is, of course, famously hit with every kind of fast food you can imagine throughout this entire movie. But what you may not know is that every time he is hit by food, it's thrown by Gore Verbinski himself.
Is it really?
Yep. So every time he's pelted with food, it was Gore Verbinski. Aside from probably the Frosty that came from that car over the shoulder, but like every other time, like when it's a close-up and he's hit with something, Gore Verbinski.
Was that him in the... getting ahead of ourselves. So that was him in the car when he chases him down?
No.
Okay, they just replace it with the actor.
They just replace it with the actor. But
Okay,
the person who actually threw it was Gore Verbinski. He looks like he looks like a middle-aged white guy.
Yeah, he just looks like a guy.
Just looks like a guy.
That's why
Really
it could have been him.
Yeah.
It was kind of what both Nic Cage and Gore Verbinski kind of bonded over was they were right about the same age, and they kind of had a similar upbringing in some ways. Nicolas Cage's upbringing is definitely not typical, but they kind of grew up in that same kind of like family dynamic and stuff. So they bonded over that, and they are actually the exact same age.
Oh wow!
This is just a couple little random things that I've found, but to complement the fast food theme throughout the movie, the McDonald's logo is shown at least 9 times throughout the movie, which is there's an overarching theme to this whole movie that I feel like I'm maybe reading too much into, but I feel like it's pretty prominent throughout. Of like Nic Cage sort of represents that me first. Baby boomers generation of kind of like the fast food generation that was sort of handed the world on a silver platter and still managed to kind of fuck it all up because they just were so selfish about everything. Whereas Michael Caine represents that great generation, the World War II, Great Depression generation that, won the war and saved America for everybody. And this is the thanks they get is McDonald's and Nicolas Cage. One thing I found that was super interesting is Nicolas Cage said that Dave Spritz is a total reflection of his real life, his relationship with his father, which is kind of famously torn. One big reason was because of his name change, like that he didn't want to be associated with the Coppolas. He wanted to be his own man and do his own thing, which is exactly what happened with Dave Spritz, who's actually Dave Spritzel throughout the whole thing. His many divorces at this point, but like especially at that point in his life, he was going through a divorce, so he really had an emotional connection to that in the story. And then of course his public perception is he gets accosted in public all the time because he's Nicolas Cage, and people kind of see him as a joke, which I think we've discussed at length on this show. Is like, think what you will of the guy, but he is a human being. You should treat him with respect, even if you find his movie choices to be not so great. But like, I can imagine him having a similar relationship to the public where he's just trying to go about his day, and then some jackass walks up to him and starts talking to him about, I don't know, Vampire's Kiss and how great it was.
One time, dude, I did that one time and you guys never let it go.
Let's break this bitch down. Act 1. Let's set some stuff up.
Our film begins on the snowy shores of a semi-frozen Lake Michigan, high above in a beautiful apartment, a fucking insanely, I can't even imagine how much that apartment must have been. I know we say that he makes $240,000 a year, but holy crap, that apartment is like, it's got to be in the millions somewhere. Overlooking the Chicago River. That's like the prime spot in Chicago. Nicolas Cage, aka David Spritzel, aka David Spritz, practices his smile for his job as a local TV weatherman. By the way, throughout this entire film, Nicolas Cage's usual subtle blue eyes will be played instead by the eyes of the Night King from Game of Thrones. I don't know if you noticed that, but holy shit, did they turn up the contrast on his eyes? Like,
I didn't notice.
Like, it's just unbelievable.
It kind of makes sense because the whole color correction with the whole movie is sort of gray and drab, so maybe they had to pop it. I don't know.
There was something going on there.
Cool color and a lot of the overall
muted.
cool color gradient. So
yeah,
maybe it made his eyes too dark.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to have done something where they like bumped it up just in his eyes, but especially in that first scene, wow, some major saturation going on in his eyeballs. He sports a super punchable face that quickly turns to a sullen frown as if he just realized someone pissed in his morning coffee, while he says, "That was refreshing. I'm refreshed. I'm refreshing." Which is a continuing theme throughout the whole movie about him being refreshing. Even when he gets offered the job later on, spoilers, they say that he's refreshing. He does this after finishing brushing his teeth and looking in the mirror. Something I think we all do when we kick off the day, That's what I do every morning. That was refreshing. David enjoys a knockoff version of Good Morning America called Hello America, starring Bryant Gumbel, while practicing weatherman Tai Chi around the apartment while getting ready for work, before he gets a call which alludes to the fact that David is up for the job on the aforementioned Gumbel show. Outside, David finds a ticket on his car saying he has expired tabs, which prompts him to head on over to the happiest place on earth, the drab, soul-crushing hellscape that is the DMV, which fits the mood of this film so well. I actually was watching the behind the scenes, and they were kind of going through the look and feel of the movie, and they just kind of went to a bunch of different spots, and they saw that shot of the clock that's just like plugged into the wall, and this is the cable just hanging down. I don't know if you remember that, but that's like the first shot in the DMV when Nic Cage walks into frame. It was taken exactly from their scouting. They shot a picture of that, and then they just put that exact shot in the movie because it does fit David Spritz pretty well. Right away, David is recognized by one of the many mouth-breathing simpletons who watch him on the news. This guy just rubs him the wrong way immediately by saying, "What's up, dude?" as his way of greeting a stranger in line at the DMV, and then he asks him for his autograph, which I'm sure happens to Nic Cage in real life all the time. "Sup, dude?" Which is it's kind of this implied, he doesn't really deserve respect. Immediately, he doesn't deserve respect. Just, hey,
What's up?
Dave tells him he's not who he thinks he is, but the guy can clearly read his name on the paperwork in his hand with a slight glance from 5 feet away, and then calls him a dick. Then says, "You're on TV, bro. Bro, you're on TV, bro." Over and over till Dave loses it. The D-bag then makes a good point by saying, "Go work in a bank or something if you don't want people to recognize you and bug you in public," which I guess is valid. Then he calls him
like something that probably happens to Nicolas Cage a lot too.
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
Just leave me alone. I'm trying to have dinner or whatever. Well, then don't be famous if you don't want to get talked to in public.
I'm positive that happens all the time to those people. You know the scene in, did you guys watch The Disaster Artist?
No, not all the way through.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene
I haven't
in there.
seen The Room, so I haven't watched that yet.
There's a scene where he goes, Tommy Wiseau, the character of Tommy Wiseau goes to a restaurant and just accosts Judd Apatow in a restaurant. And I feel like that scene is probably like very similar to what Nic Cage probably goes through all the time.
Oh, God.
Then he calls him an asshole after Dave tells him to get out of his face. It was a funny exchange there because he's like, "Get out of my face," and then he like turns around and he's like, "You're an asshole," and then he turns back around and he's like, "You want to say that to my face?" He's like, "You said not to be in your face."
But you told me to get out of your face, bro.
Next, we see David at work forecasting the weather, something he does surprisingly well through this entire movie. I mean, that's the thing that he does great, which we'll get into later on. I have some theories about kind of the overarching, like one of the reasons that Nigel didn't like the movie. I think I have a theory on it, which Vince, you might too. In voiceover, we hear him talk about how people recognizing him and that some are dicks who think they know him, but really he's not just the fake doofus that he plays on TV. David picks up his chunky daughter, who doesn't seem to be fitting in at ballet class at all. I'd make a joke, but it's 2021 and we're not allowed to do that anymore. She asks him to stop at a store so she can get a notebook, and David gives her $20 of the $21 he has in his wallet, and she uses it to buy cigarettes from the female version of Randall from Clerks, who doesn't think it's worth carding this girl who is maybe 14 at best. By the way, she's actually 12 throughout the whole movie, which we don't find out till later on, but this 12-year-old girl just went in and bought cigarettes with absolutely no issue whatsoever, which I guess is probably realistic. David puts the interest letter he received from Hello America directly on the passenger seat while picking up his dad, who has a Pulitzer Prize plaque the size of a tangerine. Sir Michael Caine, a.k.a. Robert, sits on the letter as if he's used to having to sit on garbage in his son's car. Dave takes Robert to the doctor, where Robert asks if his son can get him a paper while he's in his appointment. And Dave somehow manages to mess even that up. He pays for the paper in a newspaper vending machine. Do those still exist? Are those still a thing? Like while I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, that used to be a thing. But I don't know if people would even know what that is anymore. Little vending machines that...
Yeah, I mean, I'd see him in Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay. But he accidentally closes it before grabbing the paper. The way that those work is, I mean, it's on the honor system, so you put a quarter in, you pull it down, you pull the paper out, and then you close it and it relocks. But you could actually just grab every frickin' newspaper, which I've seen in movies about 20 times. Somebody's like stolen all the papers. So he heads into Arby's for change, which they won't give him unless he buys something. So he uses his only remaining dollar to buy a 72-cent coffee. Then he forgets that tax exists and ends up with 20 cents, as well as a coffee neither he nor his dad wanted. Back at the doctor's office, Robert is so perplexed by the fact that David didn't buy him a paper, but instead got him a coffee, that he starts to a slow descent into giving up on doing an American accent completely. That just lasts the rest of the film, where it's just kind of like, is he supposed to be American? He sort of sounds Irish at times, or English. Mm-hmm. Like I said in the opening,
He's got like probably the thickest Cockney accent of anybody working in Hollywood. And they cast him as a Midwestern American guy.
Maybe that's something he wanted like as a challenge or something like, well, let's see if I
Maybe.
can do an American accent.
I did get like a lot of like Liam Neeson vibes of just
Yeah.
Liam Neeson can't mask his Irish accent in anything, and it felt like that it was even harder. I imagine a Cockney accent is even harder to break,
He
even
had
for a knighted actor like
yeah.
like Michael Caine.
At times he kind of like, it was like his English accent mixed with his American accent that he was trying to do sounded Irish. Like he sounded like he was like about to get some Lucky Charms or something. Like I said in the opening, apparently Jimmy Carter called him a national treasure. National treasure. And they played racquetball together, so we can only assume that he's supposed to be a born and bred American citizen that didn't come from overseas. I don't know. You could probably imply like, oh yeah, he was born in England and then he came over and then he slowly lost his accent or something. You know?
Yeah.
Back at the car, David moves the letter from Hello America off the seat while announcing that he's moving this letter from Hello America off of the seat here. But his dad, who just got what we can only assume was unsettling news from the doctor, pays David nor the letter, no mind the whole way home. I love that scene where he's like looking at him through the window, like looking at the letter and then looking at him.
Just staring him down.
Just please look at it. Turns out both of David's kids are both train wrecks. His son Michael got busted huffing chrome paint and screaming, "Witness me!" before failing spectacularly in front of Immortan Joe, or was caught with drugs or something and had to go to rehab. He was a war boy. That's all I'm saying. Right.
I forgot he played him. All I was thinking was, hey, it's J.R.R. Tolkien.
He's been in a lot of things, but
yeah.
that's the one that, like, as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh shit, it's that guy.
It's Beast.
While Shelley got her dad to fork over $170 for a junior bow and private lessons to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow, but after trying twice and not being able to perfect the complex art of archery, she just gave up and hasn't been back since. I mean, it's kind of implied that maybe she spent more time there, but she shot the bow twice and then was like, fuck this. I'm out. We see Mike hanging out at the mall with Bobby Hill from King of the Hill. Did you see that kid? Looks exactly like Bobby Hill. He spots one of the counselors that he had in his rehab group, who seems to have the chubs for Mike, which Bobby Hill sees immediately, but Mike is totally oblivious until later in the film. This creepy fucker buys Mike a sweater and gets pretty damn bummed when Mike's dad shows up for some odd reason. David takes Mike home. Well, not his home. Mike, Shelley, and their mom Noreen's home, since David and Noreen are now separated. Noreen and David have an awkward exchange about Dave potentially getting the Hello America job. And then Dave shoehorns in that his dad had to go to the doctor for a test of some sort, which he doesn't mention what the test is, but he thinks he'll be okay. Even though he never asked his dad what the test was for or what the doctor said. He never gave any like mind to that at all. It's just like, well, dad's going to the doctor. I'll just see if he can see this note from Hello America that I got. That was all that was about for him. Then David tries to be playful with his estranged wife and chucks a snowball at her head.
Noreen!
I think we've all been there. Nothing says let's get back together better than an unexpected ball of ice to the face. Noreen doesn't take it as well as you would think, since he busted her glasses and unfortunately doesn't come running back into David's arms.
I just love that. He's like, hey, Noreen. And then she turns and he chucks it and it hits her. And she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, you turned into it. He called her.
It was, it's all her fault. That's a recurring fact through this whole movie is like, it's always someone else's fault. It's never David's fault till the end. Back in the city, David gets a call from the talent scout at Hello America, but is rudely interrupted by a dude who yells, "Hey, weatherman!" and then launches a Frosty at him. The first of many times he gets pelted with food. With the Frosty coating his shoulder, David hears the voice of his dad, who asks why somebody would throw a milkshake at him. It's pretty, I would ask. A little Coppola quick fact here. The plastic spoon that's stuck to Nicolas Cage's lapel was actually a metal spoon that had to be painted to look like it was plastic, and then it was held on by a magnet the whole time so that it wouldn't fall. It's attention to detail. You didn't have to have that spoon in there, but but I thought that was cool. David tries to explain as best as possible to his baffled dad that people throw shit at him all the time because they hate him for being the schmuck weatherman on TV, who apparently doesn't even have a meteorology degree whatsoever. Which I was kind of wondered about that. Steve Conrad actually mentioned that in the behind the scenes of like, they don't ever really seem to know what the hell they're talking about. Like, they don't ever seem to actually have any kind of scientific knowledge. It's just like they're just repeating something that someone else wrote for them to say, which is so fucking true. It's crazy. I've never seen a weatherman who seemed, well, you know, like the in-your-face smiley ones like Nic Cage plays in this movie, never seem to know what the hell they're talking about. They're just kind of repeating what's on the teleprompter. Robert then drops the bomb that he has lymphoma, which can't possibly be true because David said he'd be fine. Just in that previous scene there. David explains in voiceover that every couple months someone throws something at him, while a husband and wife watch Dave Spritz on TV and have an exchange that may be the closest to a real conversation I've had with my wife as anything I've ever seen on film before. The husband says, "What kind of name is Spritz?" "That's a bullshit name." "That's a TV name." "He's bullshit." And then she says, "I like him. He's handsome." And the husband follows with, "He's an asshole. I don't like his face. His asshole face." Dave explains that his job is incredibly easy and that he makes $240,000 a year plus appearances, such as being Abe Lincoln at a Civil War Oktoberfest.
Yeah, what the fuck was up with that?
I was so confused. Like, why are there like people in Civil War costumes and then Fraulein's doing Oktoberfest stuff, and then Abe Lincoln is just, I don't know. I was very confused. Anyway, David spots a sexy Fraulein with floppy titties, and then he has sex with her in his hotel room. And then he theorizes that since he receives a large reward for pretty much zero effort and contribution, people huck shakes at him out of spite. Because everything he does is easy, like getting laid, getting paid. But I'm going to make an argument later on that might change the perception of that a little bit. He then makes it his mission to prove to his dad that he's not a dipshit before he dies. You know, because his dad is this world-renowned fucking Pulitzer Prize author, and his son is this fuck-up weatherman who gets, has everything handed to him.
Anyways, he doesn't get laid like him, though.
Yeah, he doesn't get no floppy-titted Frauleins. So he makes it his mission from then on throughout the rest of the film to make sure that his dad doesn't see him as a dipshit before he dies. Meanwhile, the rapey rehab counselor takes Mike to a movie and then checks out his ass while he's going through the door. Oh, so disturbing. While Shelley has a fun conversation about burning a cunt classmate while smoking with a friend. I want to burn that cunt. David takes Shelley to the company party where he tries to get her to head back to the archery range, but she's not having it. Dave spots the cigarettes in Shelley's purse, but decides to make the best of the day by competing in a potato sack race, where Shelley falls and tears her ACL and MCL when Dave pushes her to complete the race.
Also notice that they just like leave their bag next to the skating rink when they go out on the rink. Which I'm like, what?
Chicago's super safe. Yeah, it's known for being super safe.
Yeah, just leave your bag of whatever and go, and it's on the honor system. No one's going to steal it.
Noreen bitches him out for being at least partially responsible for their daughter having a life-altering injury that will plague her till her dying breath. And thus ending Shelley's promising dancing career as well as any shot she ever had at making it in the NBA.
She'll never be a ballerina now.
Yeah. Though they do mention that she's in dance class later on again. And I'm like, I have some problems with the ACL, MCL thing, which I will address as they come up.
Yeah.
Noreen's new boy toy, Russ, shows up to try and calm things down. And David calls him a fat asshole and a dildo within earshot of Robert, who is, as usual, disappointed in his son.
I think he calls a pork fucker, which I think was the best line in the movie.
Yeah.
Pork fuck, you porker.
Turns out Robert stopped by to let the family know that Shelley has been being called camel toe at school because her classmates can, quote, see the crease of her vagina through her tight clothing.
I just want to say, this movie is really creepy when it comes to the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it has its moments, man.
I was like, why? Why would you add that into this film? I'm already uncomfortable watching this dude try to bang this 14 or 15-year-old kid. I don't need this now.
Yeah, we should probably, leave it at least one of the kids not being creepy as fuck sexually. Like, yeah. David says he's going to deal with it, and Robert is skeptical, to say the least. Yep, pork fucker. Later, Dave calls Noreen to smooth things over after daydreaming about camel toes for a bit while waiting for a parking spot. Just a little too much showing through the pants there.
Let the audience know what camel toe was, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
they needed visual aids and a flashback scene to talk about it.
Yeah. The really disturbing part is that they show Shelley's camel toe several times, which is really not something I wanted to see.
Yeah.
He suggests that they see someone and try to work things out, but is interrupted by a big gulp flying through his window and into his face. Every time this movie starts to drag a bit, you can count on somebody throwing something at Nic Cage. Dave and Noreen head to do some trust exercises where they are each tasked with naming something that affected their partner that they're not proud of. So Dave raises his hands and says, I had this thing with porno on the computer where I got a little preoccupied, but is cut off by the counselor who says she wants them to write it down, not say it in front of this group of 30 people.
At least he's being honest.
Yeah. You know, he's proactive. He was the first one to raise his hand immediately. They write down something the other person doesn't know that happened during their relationship, and then they hand it to the other person, and the other person is meant to never read what is on the paper. Dave, of course, reads his 5 seconds later in the bathroom, where he finds out that Noreen thought his sci-fi novel was stupid, sucked, and was embarrassing since he spent 4 years writing it. So we find out that Dave also wants to write like his dad did, and he's fucking horrendous at it, obviously. Every piece that talks about his writing paints it as though he's just god-awful at it, which is really funny to me. Steve Conrad also said that was a friend of his that he and his wife went to one of these trust exercises, and he was like, I mean, I feel like I would have read it right away. Did you read it? And he was like, of course I read it. It's the second that I got away from her. Which I think is hilarious. Because I think we probably all would, right?
I wouldn't.
No?
Oh, Mr. Trustworthy over here.
Look at him, Mr. Trustworthy.
all of a sudden, there he is. Mr. Trustin all of a sudden.
Over coffee, Noreen says she thinks the exercise went pretty well. And Dave screws it all up by confronting her about hating his novel. She is understandably blown away by what an asshole he is for reading the note and calls him a real blue ribbon fuck, which is a high honor. Just ask Pabst, who won the blue ribbon in 1893 and are still bragging about it.
But just like Pabst, he is a little bit of a piss sandwich.
Yeah, more than a little. Back at Noreen's, Dave says he wants to try giving their marriage another shot. To which Noreen says, fuck you. So she might need some time to process things. She then reads Dave's note, since he read hers, and it says, throughout marriage, BJs lacked enthusiasm. Had difference of opinion about how important that was. I thought very. Noreen then explains that her BJs lacked enthusiasm because she hated him. Hated his hair, his ugly legs, forearms, hated kissing his lips. And that's why she lacked enthusiasm when his cock was in her mouth. Direct quote there. Meanwhile, Shelley has been listening at least since cock in my mouth and seems perplexed. She asks how it went, and Dave enthusiastically says, good.
Act 2. The conflict.
So at the doctor's with Dad, who is dying of lymphoma, Dave asks if he started his novel yet, to which he says he's been preoccupied. You know, I wonder why.
Sorry, I didn't have time to read your amazing novel. I'm dying.
I'm dying. After the appointment, Robert explains that the cancer is too far gone for radiation and that he needs to see another doctor for some clinical trials. Not the best news.
No, that's not great.
No.
You're a lost cause, so go do some experiments and see what happens.
Dad, I need you to read the novel. You really only got a short amount of time left, if we're being honest.
Could you give me some notes?
Okay? Maybe do a rewrite. You know, just take your time. Oh, shoot. In the car, David tells his dad that he's up for the Hello America job since he never saw or read the letter he left in the seat or on the dashboard when his dad was finding out whether or not he had cancer. And then lies about having a shot at getting Noreen and the kids back and moving them to New York.
You know, I kind of felt like at the same time they kind of painted it as like he had no shot at that job whatsoever at that point. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he slowly, over the course of the show, you see that he actually is one of the front runners. But at that point, it just felt like, I don't have a shot at this stupid job that you don't give a shit about. And I'm not actually going to be able to get my marriage back together.
Yeah, like there's a recurring thing in the movie that he tries stuff a lot and it fails immediately. Yeah. So like that was that trying to set up that expectation of like, well, he's going to try for this job in New York, and obviously he's not going to get it because he sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole time I felt like even when he does start seeing success for that job, I always felt like he was going to fuck his way out of it or fail his way out of it. Because like Nigel said, he's always trying something, it fails. Tries, fails. Mm-hmm. But, you know, let's see how those failures unfold. At the station, Dave tries to catch a crash course in meteorology because he's a weatherman. And that might be handy to know. He then decides if his camel toe sporting daughter wasn't going to use those lessons he paid for at the archery range, he would. He slowly starts to get the hang of it, and finally, for the first time in the entire movie, seems to actually genuinely enjoy something. He might actually get good at archery, who knows?
I saw a thing where somebody theorized that the whole idea of the archery was that up until this point, he's been a target. And this is the way of showing that he no longer is going to be a target, and then he's going to start taking control of his life.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Because you do see, like, even in that montage of him learning, like, he's failing, and he slowly starts getting, then he gets a little success, and then it just keeps building and building and building until he, spoiler alert, murders his whole family.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's the way I thought it was.
Actually. He actually.
I like that. It was like, it's one of those positive things in life, like have a hobby, learn a skill, practice at something, work at it. I thought it was like, oh, okay, going to turn a little corner here in the mid movie switch.
Yeah, he sticks with something finally, which hasn't happened up to this point, and seems like it really hasn't happened in his life up to this point with anything.
Yeah,
aside
also,
from the
like
weather.
the part when when his daughter is learning earlier, he doesn't participate in it. Like, it's the instructor teaching her how to do it, and so when she screws it up and wants to quit, he's just like, okay, whatever. But now that he has an active role in learning it, he becomes a better teacher at it, or at least tries to, and then fails at it because he tries and fails and stuff. But it was a nice progression. Like, hey, that's the secret. His kids just want to do stuff with him, not have him bring them to stuff and do things.
I think that's
maybe
something
stay away
that's
from ice skating though.
pretty similar of a lot of fathers. It's just kind of like they don't really know how to bond with their kids.
It's very reminiscent of my childhood. Over at rapey rehab counselor's house, the pedo and Mike. Okay, how lucky is this pedo? He found the only Twilight-looking twink at his rehab center that is dumb enough to walk right into his molesting arms. Sit down for a cool, casual dinner, which I'm sure is totally normal to do with your rehab counselor.
Yeah.
During dinner, the pedo asked Mike, who is like 15, by the way, if he lifts weights while serving him salad. Little metaphor there. He's about to toss. He then suggests they take some before shots of him shirtless so they can compare them to pictures he takes of this poor kid in like a month to see if he's making gains. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. No gains are made.
It's pretty clever, It's pretty clever tactic.
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't done that?
Take your shirt off. Are easy targets. You just flatter them a little bit,
Why don't you just whip your shirt off there and we'll see if you're making any
Especially
gains.
the ones with daddy issues. He doesn't have a father figure in his life, so he latches on to the first positive male role model that comes along and also wants to rape him.
Yeah. That is true. Although the whole time his son Mike is just very oblivious to everything going on around him, other than one scene which I'll get to here in a little bit.
I mean, you notice that Bobby Hill just took the fuck off. He never.
Oh, dude, he's
just immediately like, ugh, I don't like the look of this.
That's because Hank's a good dad.
That's true.
Mike obliges and gets and things get creepy as the counselor says Mike is shredded and snaps a ton of pictures of him.
He takes like 40 pictures.
Then the pedo offers to give Mike a camera that David is planning to buy him if he maintains a B average in school.
Just make sure to take some pictures for me so I have something for the spank wall. I'll buy you that $600 camera, no problem.
No problem, dude. I'll just give it to you. David attempts to teach Camelto, whose torn ACL, MCL seems to be fine now, how to shoot some arrows, but she's still not into it because she wanted to kill animals, not to shoot targets. All right.
Do you have any idea how long it takes to rehab from an ACL and MCL?
Yes, actually.
It's like 6 months or something.
Yeah, right? It can be 6 to 12 months depending on how severe it is and how you actually attack the rehab. Let me tell you, so I was about her age when I tore my ACL, MCL.
Oh, man.
It's not fun. Like, you're not doing archery. I mean, I don't understand. I guess they I don't understand his thought process. That was one of my questions, so I'll just throw it out here because it bothered me from that point on. How do you just have this major plot point of her tearing that to the point where it leads to this huge argument and all this stuff to boom, she's totally fine because
it's done. Yeah.
It was I was stubborn like her. I didn't want to use the crutches, but for a good 2 months, if I tried to walk on that thing, I was in excruciating pain.
Yeah. And she's
Excruciating.
back in ballet dance class, like,
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, it was probably a good year before I was allowed to participate in any serious sports because they were worried I was going to tear it again. I mean, it was like 6 months, 3 months of cast it up, and then 3 months of rehab, and then from there they had me like ease back into it because they were terrified. Once again, you tear it, tear it again. It's gonna just be a nightmare for somebody that age.
And it leads to other kinds of injuries too. Like, you know, I know you guys aren't huge basketball fans, but like, I live in the Bay Area, so I follow the Warriors, and I've been watching Klay Thompson's recovery. You know, guy, he went to Washington State University, so that's where I like first watched him, and then he came and played for Golden State. So I've always had an interest in his career, and like he tore his MCL in the finals in 2018, 2019. And then he rehabbed the entire year. So it was over 12 months. And then he tore his ACL in practice. And then missed another season. So he's out 2 entire years from that one injury that will affect him for the rest of his life. Like, I remember Isaiah Thomas tore his ACL in, you know, like the early 90s, and he was on a fucking cane until like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's bad.
I heard when I was took an anatomy class in high school, we talked about the knees for a while, and like doctors call them the beauty and the beast because functionally a perfectly healthy knee is a thing of architectural masterpiece, like evolutionarily and stuff speaking. But if anything goes wrong with it, it basically can be wrecked for the rest of your life because they're so complicated and complex that, you know, you got problems with them, and then it can screw up, and it doesn't, and ligaments don't heal very well because they don't get blood supply, and so
Yeah.
I don't understand why that was part of this movie. If that was just like gonna chuck all that out the window.
like a
Like she
ankle
sprained her
injury.
knee,
sprain.
sprained her ankle or something.
Yeah, just like a sprain. I mean, because that's a very serious injury that they just like wash your hands up.
Yeah.
It's okay. Archery will heal her. All right. I'm done with my tangent. But that
She doesn't have to use her legs for that. She can use her arms. I think that was the rationale of it. It's like somebody who had never experienced that or had any kind of firsthand knowledge of it was just like, well, you could still walk around. You'll be fine.
No, oh God, no, dude. I mean, you should be on crutches and not like, in all seriousness, like the weight would contribute to the need to stay off of it because that's a lot of pressure you're putting on to your knee and to those ligaments. But
one of my big Coppola questions is, you know, what the hell is the timeline of this movie because of that? Like, I think the ACL really just throws off the whole timeline of the thing. Of like, and also, like, you know, having, you know, my dad went through a similar thing as what Robert is going through in this film. Those tests take, you know, months and months. You know, before they would eliminate all possibilities and go to clinical trials. It would be, you know, potentially a year before they would just be like, okay, well, there is no hope.
Which all that would be fine, except I don't think they're gonna. Hello America's gonna give David a year to do the interview process for their new weatherman. So that kind of puts a really immediate timeline on the whole thing.
And then at his dad's actual funeral, he does make mention of it still being winter.
But
it rains.
The whole thing takes place over the winter. So what is that? At most, an early winter in Chicago might be October to April. So 7 months.
Yeah, it's a long period of time, but still questionable.
Yeah.
David tries his best to explain that he doesn't want to kill animals, but Shelley says it's boring shooting targets, even though she hasn't even come close to hitting one yet. You know, because shooting a live moving object is way easier.
Well, it's more fun, damn it.
It is more fun.
It is more fun.
Murder's a lot funner.
He takes her home, and then he parks his car and creepily watches the house from across the street. Mike spots him on his way home, and David explains that sometimes he likes to park and look at the house because he likes to see the kids. playing guitar through the windows and such. Poor Mike can't seem to get away from creepy men watching him. I don't care if it's your father. That's still fucking creepy.
It's really creepy. I know it's supposed to come across like as wholesome, like he really misses his home and his kids and stuff. But man, it feels really creepy. Especially since he hasn't really been like the most like
hands on with Mike.
Yeah, and he's not super likable from the get-go all the way through the end of the movie. He's not likable. I don't think you're supposed to like him at any point, really. But yeah, it just makes it even creepier.
Yeah, it's just a whole creepy scene. I just feel bad for Mike. All the male figures, well, almost all the male figures in his life are just these freaking weird, creepy people.
Except for Russ.
Yeah.
He's like the only decent
He's the
dude.
only redeemable person in this movie.
Porker.
David then, that pork fuck.
I kept expecting to be some twist where Russ is also terrible, but
He's molested.
no. Like,
Mike as well.
Everyone else in the movie is awful in one way or the other, but Russ is just cool. He's just a cool stepdad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. David then monologues that someone should be happy in the house and ponders how he fucked it all up. He then has a flashback to being asked by Noreen to grab dinner and to not forget the tartar sauce. We see him walking through the chilly streets of Chicago, repeating to himself to remember the tartar sauce, while getting distracted by, among other things, a girl's ass and how much he wants to put his face in it. His hips are cold. He likes eating pussy, but most black guys don't. What happened to the guy who tried to go around the world in a balloon? Neil Young, Neil Diamond. He wishes he had 2 dicks and that he hasn't had a Spanish omelet in a long time. Being inside David's head is what I imagine it must have been like to be a prisoner in Gitmo when the CIA would blast loud, heavy music while you were stuffed into a box hardly big enough to fit you in. That whole scene was just chaotic.
It's really good at stream of consciousness. I did like that.
Yeah.
It was written really well. And somebody
I feel like
clearly
that's
has
like the best
ADHD.
scene. Yeah, best scene in the whole movie. Kind of the one
Although I
that's
did
still
wonder about
talked
the
about.
logistics of this whole situation, because it's like they live in the suburbs, but somehow he's walking into the city to go get tartar sauce from the place. Like, why didn't he just drive? I don't.
I figure he had parked and he was walking from where he parked to go get it because parking in a city can be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
it seemed to me like he just walked all the way from his house to go get food.
I mean,
which
he
is
might
like,
have.
It's gonna be freezing cold by the time you get home, dude.
He probably went to go get in the car and then started thinking he saw like a tree and he's like, oh, that's a nice tree. I wonder if that's a birch tree. And then he just starts fucking walking. He Forrest Gumps his way to this nondescript restaurant.
Forrest Gumps himself.
So as you might imagine, he of course forgets the tartar sauce, which he then lies to Noreen about, saying they were out. This seems to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, not the camel toes, but the camel's back for Noreen, because after a lengthy argument, she kicks Dave out of the house for good, which I mean is pretty fair. I personally fucking love tartar sauce, so I understand where she's coming from.
I'm exactly the same, man.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not as bad as someone you love saying they don't like this movie, but whatever. You know what? No. I'm not gonna get into it. Let's just let's keep going. I don't want to go off on another tangent. We already had some good ACL, MCL talk that I'm sure we're gonna get.
I have to say, if I have chicken strips without tartar sauce, it's fucking horrible. I mean, like, the tartar sauce completes the meal. Same with fish. I mean, like, if you eat fish and chips
it would
without
ruin the
tartar
whole
sauce,
fish and chips.
I would be pissed. I would be pissed. Noreen is 100% right in this situation.
That's all I thought during the whole thing. I was like, man, she's spot on.
Yep.
And it's just kind of like she seems to be right more often in this relationship than she's not.
They kind of paint her as a bitch a little bit, but she's totally right in every single situation.
Yeah.
Throughout the
She's
whole
mad
movie.
that he read the note. She's mad that he forgot tartar sauce. She's mad We'll get into that in a second. I don't want to spoil that part, actually. All right. So back at the station, Dave gets a call from Hello America, which prompts him to head to New York, where Camel Toe and his dad tag along so he can receive more tests. Dave and his daughter head to the mall, where she picks out some Camel Toe inspired clothing, which makes Dave understandably uncomfortable. They go for a walk, and Dave confronts her about being called Camel Toe, which she has interpreted as a sign that she is tough because camels can walk all over the desert and over hot rocks. Dave agrees with her, giving us the first genuine moment of the movie, which is ruined when Camel Toe says the dumbest thing. I think they make tires out of camel toes.
So I guess just being an idiot just runs in his family.
That's what, yeah.
Both of his kids are just totally stupid.
I was like, wow, this is an awesome moment. He's bonding with his daughter, and they're having this really genuine connection. And then she says that dumb shit.
Pertaining to him buying the clothes and stuff for her, my wife was like, why is her mom not doing this? Like, why is it on the dad to go buy her nice clothes for a 12-year-old girl? Like, it should be the mom that's helping her, like, become a woman, not the dad. So she actually gave him a pass for kind of failing as a father in this department because it shouldn't be on him as much.
Right. I don't know. I feel like it could go, dads do this kind of stuff a lot too. So
involved dads do.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's true. I was going to say, I thought like maybe that was the idea was that, each successive generation since Robert has just been dumber than the previous one, like just huge steps down.
There's something to that, yeah.
Well, I hope his daughter writes a book about camel toes.
Camel car tires.
That just be called that. Camel car tire. By Shelley Spritzel.
Afterwards, David takes her to finish shopping, this time for non-camel toe-y dresses. Which I have to admit, I did like that it then does follow up with her, like him convincing her that these more like adult or more age or body appropriate, I hate to say it, but like body type appropriate clothing, which actually make her look better, bring some life to her. Because like I made this joke to you guys earlier, the way that they portray her early on, especially when there's like that scene when she's sitting there smoking with her friend, I really thought to myself, this 12-year-old looks like a 40-year-old woman. just giving up on life and like the color palette that they chose for her clothing up until this point just very like kind of gave that to you, like just not really gives a fuck about anything. So I thought it was nice to see her actually getting into some clothing that actually accentuates her personality because she's a little kooky, and also makes her look a little more serious.
Now she looks like Blossom. You ever see that show?
Yeah.
She kind of dresses like Blossom.
Dave finally has a nice time with his daughter, and they connect over her wearing clothes that won't get her beat up and made fun of anymore at school. They show Robert her clothes, but he has some bad news. Mike was arrested for fucking up his drug counselor's car. Mike said the pedo was trying to suck him off, and Mike chucked a rock through the guy's window. I never knew how much I needed to hear Michael Caine say the words,
"He was trying to suck him off."
Until that moment, which is then punctuated by him being confused by all this jacking and sucking and fucking things up. My favorite moment, though, is Robert staring off into the distance, reliving a memory as if it happened yesterday. Alfred tells David, "I once sucked off a man whose cock was the size of a tangerine." The tangerine is a running theme in this show.
I hope you've got one in your act too, Nigel. Great.
Shoehorn it now.
Yeah, find a tangerine joke for Act 3.
Okay. Nigel's like, "I'd rather shove a rock the size of a tangerine up my ass than watch this movie again." David flips out and calls home while Shelley pretends to shoot cancer patients. She's doing the Lord's work. Noreen says the drug pedo told the cops Mike tried to steal his wallet, then shits on Dave for trying to get a job that pays him over $1 million a year that will make him a household name. That's the one point where I was like, okay, yeah, so she's not always the most reasonable person.
Yeah.
How dare he try and do this, get this job.
Get this job. And, you know, sure, it's in another state, but she, like, already wants him to have nothing to do with the family, so...
They're already estranged. I mean, kind of. I mean, she wants to be more estranged, but this is, like, the perfect thing. And then on top of that, like, think about the alimony.
Child support.
Yeah. Alimony, child support.
She gets, like, 40% of that.
Yeah. Gosh, she's not thinking clearly.
Man, I need to marry somebody and get child support. Be amazing. Just live off of that.
Robert overhears David call Russ a dildo again, as well as him call his daughter camel toe to Noreen on the phone, and is not pleased. He asks Dave to get him a coffee, but he again has no money. Just a constant, unending disappointment to his poor dad. You know, you really should carry more money, David.
Which is a callback to what he tells Camel Toe earlier in the movie. Or I can't.
She tells him the same thing.
She tells him to carry more money around because he only has $20.
I know.
That's it.
Yeah. At the hotel, Robert tells David that he only has a few months to live, which sends David on a hotel minibar bender, which, take it from me, is the most expensive kind of bender you can have. And let's be honest, how drunk can you really get off the 3 airplane bottles of booze? I mean, I guess he kind of looks like a lightweight, so he could probably pull it off.
I mean, not based on how he looked in Grand Isle. I mean, he was chugging every second.
Yeah, Grand Isle, Nic Cage, those 3 bottles would have just been an appetizer.
Probably brushes his teeth.
That's his mouthwash. He washes his mouth out with the whiskey.
I fucking love that line so much. Drink. I'm having one.
I did like the inversion of like he's not a drunk in this movie.
Yeah.
So that, like 3 shots of booze is enough to knock him out because he's such a lightweight. Whereas like I think every other movie we've seen, he pretty much just is an alcoholic.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because I think every movie he's a heavy drinker up until this one, huh? Or to be fair, in Deadfall he's a coke addict, but you know, tomato.
He also drinks a lot in that
Same
too.
thing.
Oh, that's true. He was drinking the beers, like the baby's bottle.
Mama.
Davis sat peacefully in his pass-out chair when suddenly a giant SpongeBob balloon appears in the window, and Dave imagines himself happily waving to the crowd on a float with his smiling family right by his side in a parade. He waves to the crowd like he has cerebral palsy.
Well, who's that with him?
Those are the wife outside promotional fees which put
That got his wife's ear, I bet.
that buys a lot of face.
Well, Ed McMahon and a co-host asked, didn't they used to have a real fucked up relationship? To which Ed McMahon says, not anymore. And that everything is great because he has a great salary.
He makes a lot of money now, so everything's all good.
So everything's
fixed.
Which I think is a good, I think that's actually a good comment on how people view celebrity.
Yeah.
Like these people, or wealth, like you have, once you make it and have all that money, all your problems just go away.
And there's more than a few people I've talked to when I bring up doing this show that say, like, isn't Nic Cage broke? Like, that's why he does, like, 10 movies a year is because he has no money and he has to pay all this, like, he's got, like, 6 divorces and stuff. So it's still, that may have, you know, I don't know if that was going on back when this happened, but he may have had, that may have been affecting Nic Cage as well. Like, people just saying, like, why does he do all these terrible movies? Doesn't he have enough money to not do these things? To not degrade himself with working for a living?
Working.
I will say, you know, I've heard that too from every person that I've mentioned this show too. It's like, why does he do all these shitty movies all the time? And I will say, like, with a few exceptions, I think he chooses really interesting roles. They just might be movies that are like super low budget and you know, direct to video stuff, but like He's not. I don't think that he's doing it solely to make money. I think that is a big motivation, but I also think that he actually genuinely really loves doing it, and I think it comes across in his roles. And I think that's why he's so captivating all the time, is because he fucking loves acting. So get off his back.
Get off his back, Nigel.
It's not me that says that. I defend him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at...
you really think about it, like I don't think he's just taking random roles that are offered to him. Like you said, I think I don't think he cares so much about how much they're paying him, and he just cares more about doing movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you listen
if
to
he
him,
wanted the fame and the money, he would have just kept the name Coppola and coasted off of that.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to him in interviews talking about movies he's done or decisions he's made for movies, you definitely tell he genuinely enjoys it, and he really does give this an honest effort to create a character. And that's, like we've talked about multiple times, that's why sometimes it's so eccentric and it doesn't always work. But it's more than, I don't know, like somebody like, let's say Michael Caine just phoning it in this movie, trying not to slip into his accent.
Michael Caine is Michael Caine in every movie you've ever seen. Nicolas Cage is not Nicolas Cage in more than 2 movies ever. Like,
it was nice to see him slip back into Peter Lowell in The Color Out of Space. But that's not common. You hardly ever see that.
30 years later, went back into that character for a minute.
Am I getting through to you, Mom Jack? Dave wakes up looking decidedly less refreshed than he did at the start of the film. He heads to his audition where they say they think he's refreshing, and they love the Spritz nipper, a gimmick his station came up with to show what the coldest day of the week will be, ensuring everyone knows not to forget their jackets. That's just for you guys. Dave meets Brian Gumble, who notices how melancholy he seems and asks if he's nervous, which Dave says he's not. It's other shit. I think this is how Al Roker got his job as well. Dave crushes his audition and makes the green screen his bitch, much to the delight of the executives hiring for the job. Outside, Robert and Shelley wait for David so they can head to the airport. The talent scout tells Dave he has a compulsory agreement with Purina if he gets the job, and Robert is confused to why David would be selling dog food, and then says his dog lives in a different house with his wife and children. Which was like the biggest fuck you moment in this movie.
You don't even have a pet.
Your dog lives with your wife.
Your wife and your kids. And Russ.
In that gorgeous house.
I was born in Illinois.
Yeah, that was like the biggest fuck you moment. It wasn't even him trying to be a dick. He genuinely was confused. Like in his brain, it came across to me like his dad was genuinely like, "Why would you do that? You don't even own pets. Like you don't have a pet. Why would you endorse?"
Why would a weatherman sell dog food?
Yeah, that's not what we do, David.
Why do we fall, David?
So we could sell Purina. Back home, Dave tries to talk to his son about what happened, but is blocked from going to his bedroom by that dildo Russ, who came over and decided to do David's fatherly duty for him. This doesn't sit well with Dave, so he does what any of us would do. Any reasonable man in the situation would do the same thing. He slaps Russ with a glove like a 19th century English dandy, challenging him to a duel.
Apparently they were going to a movie. What the fuck?
Why are you here?
I love that scene. It's just like it just paints an even better picture of this character. Like this, he fails at everything he tries to do. He fails to connect with his kids most of the time. He's failed miserably at his marriage, and now he fails at actually being a man. Because instead of punching Russ, which would have been kind of a little over the top to begin with anyways, he slaps him like a bitch with his glove. And his dad in the background was like, oh, that's disgusting. My son's a bitch. Which is funny because he then explains that if you don't want your father to think you're a silly fuck, then you probably shouldn't slap a guy across the face with a glove, which are words to live by. Dave's day gets worse when some dickhead kids jump on the elevator with him and press every single button. Dave then kills both children, one by strangulation and the other he just curb stomps. Actually, that's just how I would have handled this situation. My apologies.
Act 3. It's about time to wrap this thing up.
Dave takes another stab at his award-winning sci-fi novel, but after reading the incredible prose of a man snatching plutonium and drinking scotch, decides to delete everything instead. So we get this glimpse of his writing, and you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. No wonder nobody wants to read this.
The smartest thing he's done up until this point was deleting that manuscript.
It's terrible.
Did my brother write this?
He heads out to the lake to shoot some arrows, which shows that he's actually getting pretty good at archery. Like he's been practicing it in his spare time, which is, again, good to see. Have some hobbies. I found it kind of weird. Like, I thought originally that he and his daughter had set up those targets in the park, but they were still there and they were all frozen over. So, like, does this park just have targets in them and invites people to shoot arrows in a public park as people are jogging by and walking around? It seemed kind of weird.
Yeah. I know that there are, like, from my experience, I've seen them in Golden Gate Park, but they're like, there's like a big tree line and a hill behind them, so that there's no chance.
Yeah, there was no backstop. It was just...
Yeah.
It's just like setting up 3 targets in a field with the big opening behind it where people probably having picnics and I mean, I guess it's also the middle of winter, so there's probably not a lot of people hanging out. But
I guess Lake Michigan is his stop. It's like the arrows are just going to go into the lake.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I think the lake is kind of right behind there, so.
Oh, I thought it was parallel to the shoreline.
I think it's kind of like it's sort of like a little peninsula sticking out where he was at. But I feel like there was a walking trail behind the targets.
Yeah, it was, Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it's something I noticed. It was funny. Dave's mom decides that they should have a living funeral for Robert so that he can see everyone before he dies. I hadn't heard about that, like, as a tradition, but it actually sounds kind of nice. I kind of like the idea of that.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really cool idea.
Because also, like, it's less depressing than maybe, like, people, you know, all the family gets to come together and say goodbye rather than, like, come together and cry about somebody who died, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wouldn't it be great to hear all that stuff?
But I guess they have an actual...
From people, because they're going to say all this stuff after you're gone, but, like, you're not going to hear that. So I think it'd be great to really hear it, while you're still kicking.
Yeah. Although I was thinking about it, like, it's probably less common because it's probably really traumatic for the person who's actually dying. You know, it's just this constant reminder of seeing everybody sad about it before you actually die. So,
I mean, that sounds good to me.
I think it's kind of a cool idea. If you knew your time was coming to an end, it would be a kind of a cool way to end things. I think it would help me actually. If it was me, I think it would help me kind of be okay with it.
Yeah,
in a weird way.
I think I'd rather have that than an actual funeral. I mean, they do both. Well, spoilers. But I think just having that instead of the other would be a little bit probably, I don't know, easier on everybody, I would think.
Yeah.
But, have everybody be there while they're still alive, say goodbye and say some nice things and celebrate.
I guess the one downside is if you throw that living funeral and nobody shows up.
Oh my God.
You're like,
all right. Well, great.
Maybe I'll just end it now.
Another fan approaches Dave on the street while he's carrying a bow and arrow and asks him what the nipper will be this week. To which he says, "What do you want from me? It's February, man. It's cold." And then laughs like a maniac.
Fuck!
The guy says, well, fuck you then, and Dave screams, fuck you, back at him, and tries to explain how hard it is for a guy without a meteorological degree to predict the weather before suddenly getting hit with a McDonald's apple pie. This time, Dave chases after the guys who threw it and wipes it directly on the guy's mouth while ranting about needing to see his family. Dave stands in the middle of the street, literally at a crossroads, when he gets a call informing him that he got the job at Hello America. I thought he was going to get hit by a car. Like, just the way that it was shot, it was a super close-up shot of him, like, in this busy intersection with cars driving around him, and I thought they were going to do that thing where it's super close-up and then just car out of the side, like Wicker Man, when they keep showing the semi-truck hitting the girl.
But then he'd be fine like 2 scenes later.
The way injuries heal, he'd be good in about 10 minutes.
Dave heads to his dad's living funeral and tells Noreen that he got the job and that it pays $1.2 million a year. So now he should have enough money for her to love him again, in his own words. She tells him that she's marrying Russ.
That dildo?
That damn it. Porker fuck. Dave decides to head outside and practice shooting some trees with his bow while processing the news. Suddenly, he spots Russ having a smoke outside, and he turns, aims the arrow at him, and holds it long enough for the whole family to see this psycho getting ready to kill his ex-wife's fiance. Which is what I'm guessing they would assume.
Yeah, I would.
It's just like casually pointing a gun at somebody.
Okay, we should go inside now.
And I liked Russ's reaction, too, because he just sort of like,
hey,
and then just sort of backs away and goes over and stands behind Noreen.
Pats somebody on the shoulder. You see the guy about to kill me?
He's trying to kill me.
He's trying to Robin Hood my ass.
Again, another moment I thought the movie could take a turn, but didn't. Again, I liked Russ. He was like the one good guy in the movie. Mm-hmm. Which, it's a clever subversion. I liked it. Thankfully, it's time for David's speech, so he puts down the bow and heads inside instead of committing cold-blooded murder. And nobody comments on it or...
No.
Nobody
ever says anything about it.
5 minutes before, he was just aiming a bow at somebody. In front of witnesses. It wasn't just like Russ saw it and then was trying to afford it. Dave's speech goes about as well as you expect. Like anything else he tries in this movie, he starts by saying good afternoon when it's clearly dark outside. Although it's winter in Chicago, so it could have been 4 p.m. It's still afternoon.
That's true.
But yeah, it did look like it was nighttime. Then he says when he thinks of his dad, he's reminded of Bob Seger's song Like a Rock. You know, the song that Chevy used to sell trucks with for years.
Yeah.
Then the power goes out. It's as far as he gets in the speech. And once it comes back on, they skip over his speech entirely. It's been 40 minutes.
Just a little like analogy of his whole life right there.
Yeah, so he says that all anyone got to hear him say at his dad's living funeral was, my dad reminds me of the song Like a Rock.
I thought they were going to build into him actually like finishing that thought when he's delivering that monologue in his head, and then it just goes nowhere.
Well, they sort of finish it when he sees him in the car and he's trying to figure out why that song.
Yeah, which I'm glad they paid off, because I was like, oh, okay. Because I mean, like I talked about with you, Patrick, like I haven't seen this movie in quite some time, so I totally like I remember like the major points, but I don't remember some of the fine details like that. So I was like, fuck, I guess we'll never find out.
Even if they hadn't followed up on it, it kind of would have fit the movie. Like, it's just one more fucking thing that goes wrong.
Well, it's another thing like echoing that consumer culture, like fast food culture, because that song is now heavily associated with frickin' commercials and stuff. Not so much these days, but like in 2005, that commercial with that song was on repeat for like 10 years. They used that damn song. It might have been longer than that. It was a long time using that song.
It was a long time. Yeah.
Which completely ruined that song.
Their advertising slogan, and I'm sure they paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to use that song. So it's like they bought the rights to that song, probably.
It's a great song if you can ignore the Chevy part of it.
Yeah, if you've never seen those commercials, which I don't know how the hell you didn't.
be born in the early 2000s.
I'd say
I guess.
people who aren't
true.
watching Crackle don't watch commercials anymore, so they'll have no idea.
In fact, that scene was interrupted by a Crackle commercial that was for
It was
Chevy.
a Chevy commercial. Right?
We see Dave ignoring calls from Hello America while he's hanging out with his son at his apartment. Dave asks if Mike brought that stuff, which turns out to be the stuff the rapey pedo drug counselors bought him. You mean like the shirt, the jacket, or the sweater,
It was
or the camera, or what?
the sweater and the camera.
The sweater, yeah.
The sweater. Camera. He didn't buy him the camera. He let him borrow his camera.
No, that was a different camera because he had that Nikon camera. He said he was going to buy him that because it's a different kind of camera.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know cameras. I'm not a pedophile. Dave heads over to Captain Suckoff's house but not before practicing his left and right hooks and contemplating if Thomas Jefferson or Buzz Aldrin ever had hot McDonald's apple pies thrown at them. He then has the realization that only clowns get hit with pies.
It was a good thought process.
Yeah.
I like his stream of consciousness throughout the whole film. Like
Too. It's so chaotic.
it's pretty realistic.
It follows the logical non-logic of stream of consciousness. He spots the pedo and throws the camera he bought Mike at his face before announcing, "I'm Mike's father, here's your shit," and then beating the fucker on his own doorstep. He then tells him to cut the crap about Mike stealing his wallet and then belts him in the face once more.
This is kind of like the one moment that makes everybody around him universally proud of him. It's like beating the shit out of a pedophile is the only thing that's redeemable about him almost the entire movie.
Yeah. Again, I was like, we'll turn a corner. Like, he's picked up a hobby. He's actually defending his son from this child molester.
Yeah. He's kind of taking an active role in his kids' lives now. So he's getting.
Was this before
camel toe? Doesn't have the camel toe anymore, and
so was this before or after the combo he has with his dad, where his dad tells him that like nothing, the easy thing and the hard thing and the right thing.
That was after the tartar sauce thing when they decided to split.
Because his dad tells him that
that's right.
the hard thing and the right thing to do are usually the same thing.
That's right.
So it's like he's taking that to heart.
I just gotta say, like, thank God this movie for Dave's not purpose, but for Dave, thank God this movie takes place prior to cell phones being prevalent, because his ass would have been canceled. He's fucking chasing down a car, smearing apple pie on some kid, and he's beating the shit out of some dude.
People would have filmed him getting hit with food, and then it would just become even more of a thing to do.
Yeah. He would have been a meme.
Famous on TikTok.
Although nowadays you could probably embrace it and then just build a career off of it. He and Mike head off to a food court, and Dave thinks back on the many times he's been hit by food on the street. He recollects being hit with a chicken breast, a soft taco, a soda from Dairy Queen, falafel, and McNuggets. It's always fast food, shit people would rather throw away than finish. It's easy, it tastes all right, but it doesn't really provide you with any nourishment. Just like him.
That was actually a great line.
He realizes, I am fast food, is what he wrote. That's what he says in the monologue.
Yeah.
Dave explains to Mike that he won't be hearing from the pedo anymore because he fucking wailed on him. Mike is impressed by his dad finally taking charge, and Dave weirdly puts his arm around him and stares off into space as if it's the first time he's ever actually done something affectionate for his son.
I have to ask, why would you choose corn dogs?
Yeah, I like that too.
The shit out of a pedo. His son is now gobbling down corn dogs.
some phallic foods.
Why not a pastrami sandwich?
I mean, corn dogs are delicious, but I thought that was an intentional nod to the pedo wanting him to suck his dick.
Yeah.
I think that's why Dave's even like, what are you eating? How do you have those?
Do you want me to get you one? No.
No, I don't eat penis-shaped food, son. You should know that about me.
Back at Dave's place, he hears someone yell, "Weatherman!" from a passing car, and he ducks. It turns out just to be his dad, who wants to know what Dave meant by the song Like a Rock.
I love that shot so much.
I love that. It was so good. Robert explains that he doesn't get it, and Dave says the line, "I held firm to what I thought was right," was the part he wanted to say in his speech, and that it pertained to Robert. Dave tells his dad that he got the job, and Robert says that's a remarkable accomplishment, and that it's more money than he's ever made, and ends by saying, "That's quite an American accomplishment." Unlike this accent. Yeah, so there's some little not so subtle, heavy-handed symbolism there.
Yeah.
That making more money than he's ever made before is quite an American accomplishment. Mm-hmm. It just kind of feels empty and hollow.
This is kind of the point where I feel like Dave realizes that you will argue, I know that Nigel, you feel this way, but at the end of the movie, we haven't learned anything. He hasn't learned anything. He hasn't grown at all. But this is the moment that I think that he finally realizes, wait a minute, I am successful. And I've been successful this entire time. I just haven't, I'm not my dad. My dad's level of success is different from mine. But here I am on how much bigger does it get than these type of Good Morning America type things? Like, obviously,
especially for a weatherman, he's got the highest, most prestigious weatherman job in the country.
Yeah. Obviously, he's amazing at what he does, because he wouldn't have gotten this job if it wasn't for that. So I think this is more him finally realizing, holy shit, I've been successful this entire time, but it's not the type of success I ever expected to get. It's not what I feel is a success when I look at what my dad did. So I think this is the moment where he finally realizes, like, okay, all right, well, I am this person, and yes, I am successful. So
the issue I take with it is that's not the success that I think he wanted.
Yes.
I think the success he wanted is a loving family and a relationship that he didn't have with his dad.
Yeah. And I think just like archery, he's working at it, and I think that's where we leave him in this film, is he's working towards slowly trying to become the person he wanted to be, but also embracing the person he is.
But see, my thought was he's not working at it. That was my takeaway. So that's, I think, where our differences
that's not the way I saw it for sure. I saw it as like he's turned a corner, and he's slowly starting to become, you know, more of the person he wants to be, because he realizes what he's lost, and you know, he wasn't able to really get to that point with his dad that he wanted to get to, and then he wasn't able to, you know, solve his marital issues and all that kind of stuff. But he's working on becoming a better person from then on. Yeah, that's a better takeaway. If that's actually the thing that I like the movie a lot more. That just wasn't how I felt with how it ended. We'll get to it. I think that's part of the reason why it has a 59%, is because I feel like that's a muddled point that they were trying to make through the whole thing. It was like, at the end, you're just kind of like, wait a minute, he didn't learn a fucking thing.
That basically, from this point on is where I really turned against disliking the movie, like turned to really disliking the movie for it, and because of that interpretation of it. So,
that's why I wanted to call it out in this moment, is just because I think this is the moment where my line of thought of how this film is, which I've seen this movie a bunch, so maybe that's part of it, is like, you know, you don't really see those little nuances the first time through, but like after seeing it 6-8 times, you start to see those little things. So
yeah,
that's fair.
I think this scene kind of lost some of that magic, because Michael Caine struggled with giving a performance that really kind of made you empathetic to what was going on. Because what I like watching this again now, this time being older and having more life experience and more perspective on things, I thought it was a nice way to wrap up everything. Like, it gives him the closure, especially with his dad, when his dad's talking about, you know, he's talking about the novel. He's like, I read it. He's like, David, this is what I do. This is what I do. And it's kind of like him saying, like, I never expected you to be an author. And I felt like that was a nice little wrap up for his father. And then now he does realize he's successful, and now he's got this job at Hello America, and now he can, like you said, Patrick, he can now start being the person that he is already, and start accomplishing the things that he wants to accomplish, because he doesn't have this shadow of his father, of what he thought his father wanted him to be, hanging over him anymore. And that's where I got more appreciation out of the film this time around, having like, oh, okay, it's not just a dramedy about this guy who sucks at everything, who then eventually because he's the hero, he still wins in the end. There was some pivotal moments there, and I believe there are a lot of people that do experience similar paths in life that he did, where they finally realize, hey, I don't have to. I created these expectations in my head that my parents wanted, and not so much them.
Yeah.
And then they can finally have some peace.
Yeah. Ditto.
Robert notices Dave's hands and is proud to find out that his son took care of the problem with rapey McDrug counselor and says he read Dave's book, which makes Dave cringe. Apparently having his Pulitzer Prize winning father read a shitty sci-fi novel while he's knocking on death's door wasn't the last impression he wanted his father to have of him.
Yeah.
Robert then explains that writing is something he does, and he's practiced at it, and he's got good at it, like Dave and doing the weather, which makes Dave break down since he doesn't really predict anything. Wind goes all over the place. What the fuck? It's like he doesn't work at being a weatherman. He's super successful at it, but he doesn't. It's something he's good at, but he doesn't have to actually work at it.
Yeah, but that's another thing. That's another thing that I feel is a call into this whole thing is like, neither did Robert. Robert didn't have to work insanely hard to be a great author. It's just something he was naturally good at, just like Dave with the weather. Like,
right. But yeah, like archery he's working at, and he enjoys it, and he's getting better at it. So it's like, that's something that he worked at. I felt like he's tried to work at his family and then failed at it. And then, to me, the message to the movie was basically like, he tries a lot of these things. He tries to get better at a lot of this stuff, and it just doesn't work out for him. So to me, it was like, so what's the overall message in life? Like, try at something, and if you fail at it, then find the one thing you are good at it and just go with that whole hog. That was my takeaway.
Well, it's sort of like Robert says, in life, you have to chuck some things. And I think that's what he was talking about, is like, you're good at certain things, you're not good at other things. So chuck out the shit you suck at and stop trying to be good at it.
Which I thought was going to be, okay, I'm going to chuck this job in New York because I want to work at my family. Instead, he chucks his family and goes to the job in New York. Because
he's awful at being a dad.
He's terrible at it. So chuck
it's a shitty message from the movie that I got. But it's like, no, you chuck the things that you want to be you chuck the things that you don't care about, and you focus on the things that are important to you. And instead, he chucks the things that are important to him and focuses on the thing he's good at and gets rewarded for it.
Yeah, but let's be honest. His kids are going to see more of him this way.
Yeah, we see it at the end. They watch him on TV. Yeah, so, it's true. I'll get through this part because we kept cutting back. The discussion is just cutting through the breakdown, but it's covering what's in the breakdown. Robert's parting words for Dave are to throw some things away to focus on what's truly important in life and focusing on what makes him happy. Well, he says, in this shit life, you must chuck some things, but you get the gist. Next, we hear Dave say that shortly after the living funeral, they had Robert's real funeral, which takes place during a torrential downpour because it's a movie. So you can't have a funeral scene unless it's in pouring rain. Because slow-mo rain depressing looks cool on film, I guess.
Yeah.
Camel Toe tells Dave that she's sorry for his loss, which is weird because it's her grandpa.
Yeah.
It's like and they had a relationship. You see them interacting with the movie. It's not like she didn't know her grandpa, but I thought that was a really weird interaction.
Really fucking weird.
And then Mike explains that he's going to be a cameraman for Monday Night Football. So they're both finally on the right track. Was there ever any showing of Mike being interested in football in the entire movie? I can't remember.
No, but he likes cameras. So, yeah.
Dave reflects on the man he hoped he would have become, imagining qualities his dad had, but as time passed, he slowly realized that he isn't the man he thought he'd be, but is instead the man he has become, which is the weatherman. And they show it visually by all these paths he said he could take, and all these people were walking around him, and he's like, as I was going through life, I saw all these different ways I could go, and then eventually there was less and less of them, and it's just him walking in the street by himself, or along the street as the weatherman.
I think a lot of people can identify with that. Like, when you're young, you're kind of like, well, I could do all these different things, and here's the things I'm gonna become, and then as you age, you slowly realize, no, not that guy. As much as I want to be that guy, I'm not that dude. I gotta just embrace the guy I am.
Yeah.
we see that Dave has taken the job at Hello America, is still enjoying archery, and has finally embraced the life of a TV weatherman. No one fucks with him in the street or chucks fast food at him anymore because he walks around New York City with bows and arrows. Just walking around. I thought that was kind of weird. I don't know if that's a common occurrence in New York, but it seemed... odd.
I would bet money on it, yeah. I bet you see that kind of weird shit all the time.
Yeah, we watched a guy carry around a plank of wood covered in blood.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Same guy.
Same guy.
He just grew up to be a weatherman.
He explains that things didn't go as he planned. Another man is with his family, but he's happy with his American accomplishment of being behind heroes like the firemen at the parade, but at least he's slightly in front of SpongeBob. Yeah, there's a shot of his kids watching him on TV in their happy home with their stepdad and their mom without him there. And everybody just seems cool with it. Like, everybody's just happy. Yeah. And that's, to me, that was the send-off to the movie that really rubbed me the wrong way. It was just like, he's embraced the life of the weatherman and shucked his old life behind because... I don't know, because he's good at it, I guess. He doesn't have to try at it. So chuck your family if you can get a job that makes $1.2 million a year, and everybody's happy.
I mean, to be fair, he was making his ex miserable.
Yeah.
Well, he still spends weekends with the kids. Yeah, he goes back to Chicago every weekend. You know, I think he's realized that, like, he's not going to repair things over there, so he might as well try and make the best of his life that he has now, while also trying to repair his relationship with his kids at least, but not with his ex-wife. And I think he at one point he mentions that he wants the kids to potentially move out to New York with him. So maybe that's something that happens, but you know, I think this is also like probably shortly after him leaving Chicago. So I don't know, you know. I get it. I get what you're what you're saying, and it totally makes sense. And I'm sure that's a lot of critics took it the same way of like, okay, so what are we supposed to have learned from this?
It was trying to make me be happy for this guy who, like, his kids have fucked up lives because he's not involved in them. Like, you know, I'm sure if he hung out with his son more, his son wouldn't glom onto a child molester who wants to give him some cool compliments, or if he hung out with his daughter more, she'd have better self-esteem and wouldn't think being called camel toe is a compliment because she can put up with insults.
I would argue that that's the best level of self-esteem one can have. She doesn't even think it's insulting. She's like, I think it's because I'm tough.
Okay, well then she's also still doing bad things like hanging out with people, buying cigarettes and smoking and talking about burning cunt classmates to death and stuff. It's like,
that's the thing.
Like, he's the cause of his family's dysfunction.
Yeah, so being away should make them healthier.
I guess, but it's just like
it's the reverse of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Clearly, his kids don't hate him; they want him to be part of their lives. Yeah, and he like takes the opposite approach and decides to pursue this expensive job somewhere and live in a different city and be happy with that. And it did not sit right with me.
Yeah.
With it, like at least like show that being a negative thing in his life, like, you know, I guess I'm the weatherman, and show his kids missing him or something. But it seemed like they were all happy with him watching him on TV and then going to live their happy lives. Yeah, and he's smiling. He's the weatherman now. So it was just.
I do feel like that
it's a cautionary tale of events, like, don't be this kind of a jerk off asshole or idiot, whatever, because you'll end up with a unfulfilling life like this. But I feel like the movie didn't do enough to show that the payoff was bad in the end. You know, it was more like, find what you're good at and that'll make you happy in life, even if it's at the expense of your family or your relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
And
I get the sense that,
and if I'm interpreting that completely wrong, then that's on me. But I also feel it's kind of on the movie, because the movie should have not left me with that interpretation if that's what they were not going for. But it just left me really down. And that's after the movie was kind of long, and I don't want to say it was boring, because there was a lot going on in it. It had a lot of moments. I enjoyed individual pieces of it. I just thought the overall result at the end was a message I didn't like, and there were a lot of the dialogue and interactions were just kind of off. Like, they just didn't feel believable to me. Like you said, when he's having the conversation with his dad in the car, or one of them, I think it was Vince that said it. Like, it didn't feel as cathartic, or like they were trying to make it feel cathartic or a climax, but it just, the performance performance, whether it's Robert or Michael Caine's accent or the way that they just sort of are weird with each other. It just didn't. It felt kind of flat for me.
Yeah.
And then again, I felt like, okay, well, we'll redeem it by taking that lesson to heart, and he'll chuck his job and he'll get back on focusing on his kids and stuff. And then then they do the other thing. He chucks his kids and family and focuses on his job. So
I feel like they did like a bait and switch on that too, where like he's in his old station and watching TV and like drinking water, and then he chucks it in the garbage, chucks the thing in the garbage, the cup, and then walks out, and then he's doing Hello America. Like, what? Okay. Yeah. I sort of got the same thing, and like I think the point is like this guy isn't a good dude, and you shouldn't live your life this way, and like you shouldn't wait until it's too late. Like I feel like that was what his overall arc was. Like everything he did was too late. Like he just didn't connect with his dad until it was too late. Like his dad was dying before he was finally like, okay, well maybe I should try and actually make this guy not see me as an idiot. And then same thing with his kids. Like it's too late. Like he's trying to repair his marriage, but it's too late. That also really bothered me because again, in the conversation he has with his dad says, you never stop worrying about your kids. Doesn't matter how old they are, how old you are, they're still your kids and you're going to worry about them. And he tells them, chuck things out. You still have time. You never stop worrying about your kids, as in like, chuck out this stuff, go be with your kids, be the father they want you to be, just be part of their lives, because you don't have to have the same kind of relationship that you and I have. Mm-hmm. And to me, it seemed like he still chucked his kids and went off and did the exact opposite of what his dad said. Yeah. So, to the movie's point, that is a good message that I really liked. I just felt like the movie made him not do that and then kind of rewarded him for it. Yeah. So I also kind of feel like there's this overarching like undertone of this kind of like me first generation of like him at the end, like he looks into the camera and says, "Hello, America." And I think it was the point of it was like, I am you, don't become me. So you need to actually go and try with your family before it's too late. And you need to do, like you said, it's on the film to express that, which it didn't, which I get. But yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I feel like that was kind of what they were trying to do with that ending. But yeah, at the same time, it kind of like everything built up to that ending, and then it turned into him just taking off and chucking his kids. Right. It's kind of funny.
We'll pare it down to 3 applicants after we watch the tapes. We'll call if you're one, Dave.
Okay, Mark. It's nice to make your acquaintance.
You too.
Hey, weatherman!
Fuck! Fuck!
When Dave gets pelted with that Frosty, how did this guy know who this guy was? All he could see from the road was the back of his head, unless he was tracking Dave's location. This movie took place in 2005, so David Spritz probably didn't have access to a VPN like Surfshark. If he did, he might have been saved being hit by this Frosty, blasted by this Big Gulp, and most likely saved a trip or two to the dry cleaners by encrypting his online data and changing his virtual location so jackasses like this guy can't track him in public and chuck apple pie in his face. Don't be like David Spritz, in more ways than one. Get yourself set up on Surfshark now by visiting surfshark.deals/onecagepod and save 83% plus 3 extra months for free by entering the promo code OneCagePod.
We have a Coppola questions before we move on.
What the hell? We mentioned this in the breakdown, but what is the timeline of this movie? It's like the whole thing's supposed to take place over the course of winter. Mm-hmm. But Shelley's whole ACL thing really fucks it up. And then, like, how long is Hello America scouting for him? How long until, how long was it before Robert was told that he had months to live? And then how many months after that was it till he died?
Well, it's not, because he says, like, they said I have months left. And he's like, well, how many months is that? Like 12? And he's like, well, I think if they if they meant 12, they would have said a year or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like it's still not taking place over that long. At least from that point forward, it's still months, not a year. So. And like you said, they specifically say that it's still winter when the funeral happens, so we're still in the same season.
And what parade are they doing when he's in the Hello America thing? Is that Thanksgiving Day parade? Does that mean that it's been a full year since?
Maybe.
Or like now it's November from March or whenever that was.
I kind of got the feeling that, it was sometime in the future because he's established at the job. He's like getting on the float. His kids are living their lives, watching him on TV and are happy with it and stuff. So, it's probably like the Thanksgiving Day parade next year or something like that. He's America's weatherman now. Like, enough people love him because he's been, I feel like they wouldn't have that sense if he was the new guy,
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
If it was like the Christmas parade or something, like, it just wouldn't be enough time for that to happen.
I guess we already answered, I think, pretty much all of my questions here. But what was the pedophile guy shoplifting? Because he tells him to chuck it in a bag that he clearly already purchased something in, right? That was
like,
never really answered.
I get a cool discount. Yeah. Maybe it was just to show that just in case you don't get creepy Chalmo vibes from him because you don't have red flag detectors like Mike doesn't, but he's shoplifting, like he's not a good influence. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's also to show that like Mike doesn't see that being a weird problem either, to show that Mike's even dumber than we thought.
Mike is such a dummy through the whole thing,
this guy is obviously, grooming him and then also is obviously shoplifting, and Mike's sidekick friend sees it and pieces out immediately. Yeah. Mike doesn't. So
it's like, hey, you're gonna get molested. I'm out. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Plus, we know that Mike's not making the greatest decisions because he got busted and he was in drug rehab for whatever he did too. So, which again is supposed to, I think, show like his dad's not involved in his life, so he's not making great decisions.
Which at one point Dave says that he thinks Noreen overreacted to whatever the drug thing was. I'm not really sure what exactly happened there, but like maybe she caught him with the drugs and then called the cops on him or something. I wasn't sure what happened there.
Or maybe it was just some pot and she threw him in rehab over it. Like, it's obvious, like, a 15-year-old smoking pot is not something I think is rehab worthy, but it's maybe that was the overreaction, which again, I guess led to him meeting this pedophile and going down that road. So
she led him right into his arms.
Marine, maybe.
Right into his arms.
And then my final thing is like, no one mentioned him aiming that arrow at Russ. like nobody said a thing.
It was in front of at least 4 other people, right? Like,
it was in front of his ex,
because Russ walked
his
over
mom
to
and his dad, and then some random person.
And it was out on the lawn, so I'm sure other people were observing what was happening.
Yeah,
and they're definitely not like dull arrows, like practice arrows. He was shooting into trees.
Yeah. They would have killed him for sure.
They would have killed that guy, 100%.
And they're just like, Dave's being Dave.
He's so quirky.
He's so quirky. It's Peter Lowe all over again.
Careful, I hear Russ has a gun in his purse.
It's a good callback.
Do you guys think that Nic Cage actually learned archery for this movie?
I do. Yeah,
I do, because his form was pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that he worked into the character. Like, he probably did some lessons and stuff. Since we know that he's done that in other stuff, like go be an ambulance ride along for a couple of sessions and stuff. So
I will say one thing that I saw on the behind the scenes was like when he jumps in front of the green screen, he had hardly any practice, and he just did it. And they were like, it takes some weathermen like years to get good at like knowing where things are showing up on the screen and stuff. And he was like almost instantly, like he had that showmanship and knew exactly how to move around. Like Nic Cage said that he watched a bunch of weather reports, beforehand, and like watched their gestures and did the same thing that Dave does in the movie, where he like practiced around the house and like, and then there was actually a meteorologist in the behind the scenes saying like it was amazing because I've done that job and it's incredibly hard, like knowing exactly where things are going to be imposed on the screen, and you have to like really practice at it. But Nic Cage was just Nic Cage.
I gotta imagine he's got a little bit of a bonus being an actor.
Yeah, for sure.
He's used to watching roles and mimicking them and all that stuff too. So probably more than the average weatherman has.
And I'm guessing that because it was green screen, they were able to just kind of throw whatever they wanted in there. So it's like, oh, well, his hands are down here, so let's just make sure that the stuff is coming out here.
That's cool, though. My other question was, how much do you guys think of the movie's budget was paid for by product placement in this movie?
I don't think a lot. I think they, it's kind of like I was reading this thing about Talladega Nights, and like they wanted it to be all about how disgustingly over consumer sports are and how consumer heavy racing is in general and stuff. And they said they put all of those ads in there and didn't get a cent, because they wanted to show off all of those different brands. So I don't know, it could be different in this movie, but like, that was a big part of the whole overall theme, was like that he is fast food. Gore Verbinski actually said that Robert is filet mignon and Dave is Egg McMuffin.
Jeez,
that was such a great quote.
That's harsh. Holy shit, that's harsh. He can't even be a McGriddle. He's got to be a McMuffin.
It's a McMuffin. So the fast food theme is there from the very beginning, and I think even the ending, I think, was like a reflection on like, hey, fat asses in America and lazy losers, like this is what your life will become. If you don't start taking responsibility.
That is the theme, is he definitely shucks responsibility, and when he starts finally taking responsibility for his actions in life, whether it's positive or negative, he then finds
it's too late
for like
it's almost always too late.
He finds it's too late to repair these things, and now he's just gonna make do with what he can.
Make do with his millions.
With his 1.2 millions. And all his floppy tits.
Floppy Fraulines.
Fraulines. Keep the Abe Lincoln beard on.
It's like the bad Santa thing. Fuck me, Abraham. Fuck me, Abraham.
Emancipate me.
Emancipate this vagina.
It's time to keep track. Here are the final stats.
So, Curse Tracker, this one was heavy duty. There was a lot in there.
It was, but not as much as you think.
Really?
It was very it was loaded. It was very fuck loaded, I should say.
Did you count dildo as a swear?
No. Or camel toe. I didn't count that as a curse either.
I saw somebody did a supercut of all of the fucks, and it's like 4 minutes long of just the fucks in this movie. So
yeah, I will get to it. So there's 3 shits and 2 assholes. It's kind of apt. And that's it, except for fuck, which there were 35 fucks in the movie.
Wow.
Which is more than Deadfall, which had 34. So currently this is the top of the list of fucks for any of the movies.
Those are all Nic Cage. 35 from Nic Cage?
Those are just Nic Cage. Yep.
Holy shit.
I don't count anybody else. There were other swears, obviously, but just from him. There were 35, which I did not expect.
No, holy smokes.
To be that many in this one performance. But that puts a total of 40 for this movie, which puts it behind, what is that? Behind Deadfall, which had 44, which was like 20 minutes of screen time. So Deadfall did a lot of work in that time. Nick was swearing a lot,
Quality over quantity.
And 47 behind Vampire's Kiss. Vampire's Kiss had 47 curses in it. And this had 40 total. But again, 35 of those were fuck. And the other 2 were just asshole and shit, which is like PG-13 swearing. So barely even registers.
So Vampire's Kiss is still tops, right?
Still number one. Yeah.
Nice.
That brings our total to 199 curses.
Wow.
106 of those are fuck. So there's a pattern overall.
He loves.
It'd be fun to turn this into a chart at the end, like into a graph.
Awesome.
I couldn't believe it. Like, this is probably like the nicest character he's played in any of these movies, and he swore more than almost any other movie. He definitely said more fucks than any other movie.
I mean, that's real to life. These are like, this is supposed to be realistic conversations, and I think I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure I say fuck at least 35 times a day.
Yeah,
start keeping count,
not more. Nudity tracker. We had one breast hanging out,
which I was surprised at.
I know, me too. It was so awkward.
Yeah. I actually went back and retroactively added back in that one man ass from Bringing Out the Dead. I've started charting everything now, so we are up to
hobo ass.
Hobo ass. We are at 9 breasts so far. 1 female ass if you count Fanny from Grand Isle. 2 man asses. We got 1 Michael Biehn in Deadfall, and then the homeless guy in Bringing Out the Dead. 0 vagina so far. Can't wait to see what the first movie is with that. I actually think
you're not going to count. You're not counting Camel Toe.
No. I actually at one point I had some nipples and like some like you can imply that there's vagina there or something, but I was like that's too much work. Dog Eat Dog definitely has a lot more nudity than any other movie we've done so far. That'll be fun for everybody. One technically one penis. If you count the boxer tent from Mr. Nicolas Cage in Vampire's Kiss. So 13 instances of nudity so far over the course of our 7 films. As for the state and country tracker, we were in Chicago and New York. So that brings our grand total up to 6 states. California twice, New York 4 times, Washington, Louisiana, Massachusetts, and Illinois. So starting to add up. I wonder, like, by the time we finish all of his films, are we going to hit all 50 states? There's some obscure states that you wouldn't think would be in films, such as like Ohio, which is in our next movie, which takes place entirely in Ohio, which is funny. So, I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there eventually. I also added a budget versus gross tracker. Now that we're 7 movies in, I think it's even more relevant as we go along. How much money has he lost and gained for studios so far? This movie, of course, had a $22 million budget, made $19 million, so it was a bomb, which brings our grand total up to $117 million budget for the 7 movies so far, but it's only made back 76.8. So he has lost $40 million in our 7 movies so far. To be fair, a couple of those movies were direct to video, so there really isn't any kind of like budget or gross from those, like Grand Isle and Colorado Space. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out when we start doing his bigger box office movies, especially his run in the early 2000s, late 90s. Where he was kind of doing blockbuster after blockbuster. So yeah, that'll be fun to track. I also added a rating tracker, which this movie was R-rated, so that brings us up to 4 R-rated movies, 1 PG-13 with The Wicker Man, and then 2 unrated movies. Which I got a bad feeling we're going to end up with a lot of unrated movies.
Yeah,
throughout the course of this thing. That leads us over to the Cage kill tracker.
All right, so we came close to getting a kill in this film, but he pushed out at last second, twice actually. So 0 kills, but over the 7 movies we watched, he has had 7. He's killed 7 people. Deaths, we're finally starting to see a nice turn here, where once again he survived. So we are at 5 deaths out of the 7 films we watched.
Crazy that we went 5 in a row and then 2 in a row of him not dying.
Yeah.
5 straight deaths and then 2 lives.
So, what did you think? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
So that leads us to the moment of truth. I'll be interested to see how this totally works out here. But Vince, where does The Weatherman 2005 rate on your Cageometer?
All right, so movie-wise, I give it a 7. Overall, I really enjoy the film. I thought it was, especially having watched it now years and years later, I thought it is crafted pretty well despite Nigel's objections. I really do like the fact that they show this guy who is trying to do good things and make changes, and he just keeps failing at it because ultimately he doesn't put his full heart into it, or he's making decisions based off of some unrealistic reality that he has built in his head, like around his marriage, right? He has this idea that he can fix it when in reality he can't. And I like they show that, he's just failing, and then I like that they do start showing that he starts building a relationship with his kids. As awkward as it is, you do get some genuine moments that feel good, like when he takes her camel toe clothes shopping, and they start building a good relationship there. And then, he could have been a dick and told his son not to shove that hot dog in his mouth after he beat the shit out of his pedo counselor. But instead, he just creepily
put his arm around him, yeah.
Put his arm around his son. And Al Bundy's himself while he watches people enjoy food at the food court.
That aren't phallic.
That aren't phallic. Yes, I like that, and then he has that moment where he's able to finally kind of come to terms with everything with his dad and let go of this expectation that he, in my opinion, he had built up that his dad wanted him to be right. Like he finally lets that go and realizes, I am successful, I can build off of this, and I'll take the Hello America job and change my life. I do like the fact, personally, I like the fact that he did end up leaving his family, his kids behind to go do this in New York, because realistically, I feel like had he stayed, he would have just continued the endless loop of failing with them. Now, I would think after everything he's been through, he would then cherish those moments more that he spends with them on the weekends, and actually try to add value to it without being overbearing like he's been. And it gives them it gives his family some really needed time away from him.
It also gives him a chance to work on himself. I didn't really think about that until just now, but maybe he really needed to, I need to go off and work on me before I can really connect with my kids.
Yeah.
Good. I think the archery shows that. That's the first time we see him doing something just for himself. It started as an interaction he could have with Shelley, but we show you that he continues doing it on his own time and practicing at it and working at it. So,
he gets good at it and builds some confidence. I think, for his character, I tried to look at this as an optimistic perspective. He ends and is actually putting heart into these changes that he's been trying to make throughout the whole film, which I believe in this fictional guy's life years down the road, if you came back to him, you would see he is in a better place, and he does have a better connection with his family because he went and worked on himself and actually made an honest effort to be in their lives and stopped harassing Russ and let his ex-wife be happy. So I think that's how the movie plays out in my head. That's how his future goes. So, but there were like we talked about, there were some things in the writing that were confusing, i.e. the ACL, MCL stuff. I thought it was unnecessary to have the storyline about his daughter having a camel toe. Just adding one more cringe factor and uncomfortable factor to the movie for me. So I could have done without that stuff. But it's definitely a movie I enjoy, and I'm glad that we got to see it again. Or I got to see it again because it's been quite some time since I watched it. Now, as far as Nick, I'll give him an 8 on this one because I felt like last movie I talked about, I felt like they wasted, like Scorsese wasted him a little bit because there were moments where I really wanted Nick to be Nick. But in this film, I felt like if he had gone over the top, it would have just totally ruined the movie. I love how he played this character, just subdued, just really beaten down. And you mentioning that he has said that he's gone through a lot of this stuff personally, I feel like that genuinely came through his portrayal. So that added a lot to me. And so far, out of all the movies we watched, I think this is his best performance for me, because it's just it felt so authentic. It really did feel like you were watching somebody who's just kind of at the rope's end, right? Just really just frustrated and upset and just clinging on, trying to be a good person and trying to do the right thing and making all these dumb mistakes, right? And I like that he never went like super crazy. Even when he was, being a dick to that dude in the DMV, he could have gone all cagey on it. But he played it out like you would expect. Like, dude, just like get out of my fucking face, shut up, leave me alone. Yeah, and even with Russ, like I totally forgot that he slapped him with the glove. I really was like, he's gonna deck him, and it might be over the top. Nope, just slaps him with the glove. When he pounds on the pedo, like just very kind of like this, like he's doing something. Like it came across his character like doing something he's never done before. He's never been violent with anybody. He's never confronted anybody physically, and it's just this awkward scene that I thought he played really well. I made it believable. So I got to give him an 8 on that. Those are my thoughts.
Definitely felt it like an authentic performance throughout. Just felt like, that he's lived through this.
Yes, it really, I mean, it felt relatable. Like when he's in moments of like desperation, like the way he portrayed it, it's like, yeah, okay, I can see that. I felt down on my luck at times. I forgot the tartar sauce once, like you can relate.
Who hasn't forgot the tartar sauce at some point or another?
Yeah. So we'll just skip Nigel. Patrick, what did you think about this movie?
Well, I thought Nigel made some good points.
I don't know what's weird. The recording got cut off and we didn't hear any of them. So, I don't know.
Folks, we're sorry, but Nigel had to leave at this point. And he's not returning. He said he had a job lined up in New York.
He's got a different podcast he wants to do.
He's got a podcast in New York.
Something about Willem Dafoe.
He made a ton of money, so I just said, screw my friends.
He chucked us.
I'm gonna go, yeah.
All right, Nigel, where does the weatherman rate on your crackle-o-meter? I mean your cageometer.
Well, I'm glad I didn't pay money to watch this movie. So that's the one positive I can say about Crackle. I originally wanted to give this a 4 out of 10. Just because I found the
So you thought that this movie was on par with Deadfall, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's all. I realized I can't do that. That's too mean.
You came to your senses, thankfully.
But I can't give it. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 because I can't give it a 6 because to me 6 is enjoyable. I didn't find this movie as enjoyable. I agree with almost everything you guys say about this movie. We've covered it at length. The movie does have thought in it and it's got portrayals in it. It just didn't. Nothing hit me that right throughout the whole movie. And again, it was that takeaway that I got at the end that just sort of tanked the whole thing and made me feel like I just wasted an hour and 40 minutes to end up with a downer of an ending message that it made me feel like it was trying to be uplifting. And again, it's my interpretation, but I guess one of the benefits of this digital age is I have a webcam and internet connection, so my opinion on a movie is just as valid as Robert Ebert's.
Well, spoiler alert, Nigel, he's not giving out reviews anymore.
To me, it was like this story about an irredeemable loser who sort of tries things, and the movie was telling me try things and then immediately you'll fail at them, and then just keep doing that through life until you find the one thing you're really good at, and then you just do that and ignore everything else, even if it's your family and things that you thought you cared about. It just, and again, if that's not the meaning that they wanted to go with, I totally understand. That was just how I felt as I was watching it and how it was presented to me through the eyes of this character. So, yeah, that's why I throw it right in the middle of the road. The opinion could change. I could watch it again later, like you guys have had, and interpret it in a different way, and feel more positive about it. I just felt that it was not that uplifting of a story, which not stories don't have to be that uplifting. It was just that it felt to me like it was trying to be, but sending such a mixed message that sort of sabotaged its own presentation of it.
I get that.
So again, it's just middle of the road, 5 out of 10, not terrible. It doesn't suck as much as I said it sucked. It's obviously got craftsmanship and work put into it. As for Nic Cage, I give him a 9 out of 10 in this.
Dang.
Wow. I did actually loved his performance in this. And I think part of that is because he did such a good job of playing this guy that I fucking hate, through the course of this movie, that there were multiple times when I was not watching Nicolas Cage anymore. I was watching this character of David Spritz or whatever, Spritz, and he fell into that character so well, and it felt effortless. It felt, and it's not an over the top character. It's a realistic character. I get it. I think that's even harder to do than an over the top guy like somebody like Eddie from Deadfall is probably easier to choose scenery and overact and scream about stuff, especially for somebody like Nic Cage. But even at the times when he starts to lose it, like when he calls Russ a pork fuck, like. It's subdued. It feels realistic. It feels like he's not screaming his head off at him, but he's a guy who's generally a nice guy who's like, losing his temper, but not all that experienced with it. Which again, from what we know from Nic Cage, he can, at a performance, lose his temper and make it look like he's actually losing his goddamn mind in a way that's great. But I still felt like I wasn't watching a subdued Nic Cage. I was watching an actual person react to these things and do this stuff, which I've really appreciated. And I didn't notice that his eyes were more blue than normal.
Might have just been my TV or something, but really, man, I really did love his performance in this as a guy that I hated so much. Can I interject a quick quote from Gore Verbinski that I think really kind of shows why it's such a genuine performance?
Yeah.
Gore Verbinski said he met with Nic Cage when he was thinking about casting him, and Nic Cage said, "I am this guy. I don't have to act. This is me." He's been through marriages. He goes out and people harass him publicly. He's got father issues, and he's struggling like all of the rest of us against mediocrity in our lives. So there really was no one else who could possibly play the part of David Spritz than Nic Cage. They never even thought about someone else. So.
Damn, that's awesome, but also really sad. Like I feel really, if that's how Nic Cage sees himself,
I 100% think that's how he feels. Yeah, and it's probably gotten worse, especially now that he doesn't do mainstream movies anymore.
Yeah, because this was like the absolute height, like peak of his career when this was happening. So, which again, it's the peak of Dave's career. He's can't get much more than Good Morning America or Hello America or whatever. I can't not sing his praise for this movie. As much as I didn't like the movie and was a downer on it, he was a very, very good performance out of it. And very enjoyable.
Okay, on my Cageometer, I also gave it a 7 because I agree there are flaws, and I do think that it gets muddled sometimes in its own message. I've seen the movie 6 or 8 times now, like I said, and personally I love the movie. I feel like, sometimes I end up liking movies better when I don't fully get it, I don't fully understand what they were trying to tell me, and it makes me want to keep coming back to the movie so I do understand it. And a lot of people don't like those types of movies, my wife included. She hates those kinds of movies. So I understand, Nigel, your feeling on the movie, and I do think that it is majorly the fault of the filmmakers, that they didn't make it clear. But sometimes it's nice to not have a clear message. I do kind of I get it. Like I don't fully understand what the hell the point was at the end. What exactly are we meant to learn from this thing? I think the biggest thing that I took away from it was the charming yet melancholy father-son dynamic throughout the whole thing, which I think especially as a son. I totally identify with that. And I think that's actually the first time I ever saw it was, 2005, 2006, around the time that it first came out. And I think even then I had the exact same thing because I too kind of did what Dave Spritz did. And I chose a career path that my dad didn't understand and really didn't have a sense of what it was at all. Like, in his mind, the world that my dad grew up in, doing what I do for a living, which is, I shoot video for a living and I edit and that kind of stuff. And in my dad's eyes, that was, as foreign as like going to clown school or something. Like he couldn't possibly understand that. And like, when I was talking to him about what I wanted to do with my life, like he was just so baffled by it. And it made me feel disappointed in myself. Like, why can't I just do what my dad did or, follow in my dad's footsteps, do business or something like that. And I tried to just go like that because I felt that same kind of like pressure of like, well, I should do what my dad did because he was successful. So it would make me successful. But at the same time, it's like no part of me wants to do that. And I'm not good at it. And I wouldn't be good at it. And I was terrible at it in college. Like I was horrible at going into, standard business type classes and stuff like that. So I chose my own path. And, it took a while to actually get there because I was feeling that same kind of like pressure that Dave Spritz probably was when he wrote that shitty sci-fi novel. One thing I read, I saw in the behind the scenes of Steve Conrad, I think Steve Conrad, the writer, who said that he hears the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but he's like, sometimes that's way off. I really feel like the apple does fall far from the tree because, he said that like, I don't do what my dad did. My kids probably won't do what I do. So I don't think that that's necessarily true. And Dave Spritz is incredibly successful in the path that he took. It's just not what his dad would have chosen. And that makes him feel like he's not a success, which, to get somewhat sentimental, I lost my dad not long ago. But one of the things that I am really proud of is that I was able to show my dad how successful I became because of it. Because it's opened up this crazy, wonderful world for me of traveling and being able to have all these opportunities that, my dad could have never fathomed. When I told him I was going to go to clown school, he was like, there's no way you're ever going to be able to, like I've gone to Europe for free like 5 different times now. I've traveled around the country. I've done all sorts of really fun and amazing things with this job. And he was able to see that, And I think that was kind of what happened in the movie was like Robert was able to see, oh shit, he just got a job that pays him $1 million. Obviously he's good at this, and I don't, I think there was actually issues on both sides there. Like, I don't think his dad ever tried to understand what he did. And I don't think he ever tried to understand where his dad was coming from. So I really identified with that whole butting of heads between fathers and sons. I think even though Robert didn't understand the path his son took, he was still enormously proud of him and just wanted the best for him because, as he says in the film, there's always looking out. Maybe the message doesn't resonate with everyone, And sometimes it gets muddled in there. I don't think, it's totally clear throughout the whole thing. But I think it's an important film and well worth your time if it's, it is at times slow and like I said, muddled. But like I was saying in text, like if even one person watches this movie and decides to stop being a selfish dick who only cares about their own station in life instead of giving a shit about the people in it before, like when it's too late, when it's already like way past the point when you should have started giving a shit, then I think it's worthwhile to watch. And I think it's wrong to kind of cast him off as a, this kind of loser. Because I think that's a projection that he's seeing of himself. He's projecting himself as a loser based on what he thinks he should be based on his father, which I don't even think his father gives a shit what he does for a living as long as he's successful. And I think that's true of most fathers. Like, as long as your kids are able to take care of themselves, then that's the most important thing. For Nic Cage, I gave him an 8. Because like the same thing that Nigel said, like he just disappears in this role, and I think that's something that's kind of been lost. I feel like in newer Nicolas Cage movies, like the last like 6 or 7 years, it's Nic Cage, and Nic Cage is getting cast to play Nic Cage too often. I feel like, and this is such a like charming role for him, and like so transformative, because he really does turn into Dave Spritz in this movie, and I love it. I think it's a great movie. From my perspective, I really enjoy it. But yeah, I totally get what Nigel's saying. But at the same time, I've tried to like argue it back, but at the same time, it's like it's not on me to like change your opinion of the movie. Maybe your opinion will change over time by watching it again, or maybe it's also me casting my own like history on the film.
Yeah, and the movies are a back and forth between the viewer and the creator. Like any piece of art. So everybody's interpretation will look and feel slightly different.
I think that's one of the things, that contributed to the rating overall. 59% is not great. And I think that's, half the people probably felt the way that Vince and I did, and then half the people probably felt the way that you did. And both are valid in their own way. Yeah. So I think that's what's great about this show is like, up until this point, we haven't really disagreed much. And I don't feel like we super disagree on this film either. But I feel like... No. It shows that like we're not gonna every single time out the gates be like universally we all feel exactly the same way, and I think that's kind of great.
Well, anyways, when we recast Nigel, I'm looking forward to hear new Nigel's take on this film.
Here it is, the moment you've all been waiting for. These are the cagiest moments of the film.
What's the problem? It's February, man. It's cold. Fuck!
Step back right now.
Fuck you right now.
Fuck you, Spritz.
Fuck you, fat asshole. Dildo.
David, what are you doing?
I'm talking to my wife. I'm talking to Noreen and this clown whose business this isn't.
You call me a dildo, it is my business, Spritz.
You are a dildo, pork fuck. You porker.
Stop. Now, I want you to name something that you did that affected your partner and that you're not proud of.
I had this thing with porno on the computer, sort of. I got a little preoccupied and...
Actually, I want you to write it down, not say it.
Okay.
I want you to put it...
It does, because it's just wind. It's wind. It blows all over the place. What the fuck?
Man, I'd like to put my face in there. Right in there. Tartar sauce. My hips are cold. Tartar sauce. That's when you know it's cold. I like eating pussy. Tartar sauce. A lot of guys don't. Well, maybe they do. Maybe that's just black guys. Tartar sauce. What happened to the guy who was trying to go around the world in a balloon? Did he make it? I should put some espionage or stolen plutonium in my novel. Tartar sauce. Spice it up. Neil Young. Fuck, it's cold. Neil Young. Why am I thinking about Neil Young? Neil Diamond, Neil. There's not a lot of famous Neils. Is this Wednesday? I wish I had 2 dicks. I thought the whole family was going to learn Spanish together this year. That never really happened. I haven't had a Spanish omelet in a long time. There we go.
All right, that's it for this episode of One Cage at a Time. As always, be sure to drop us an email at onecagepodcast@gmail.com to let us know if we missed anything, or hit us up with suggestions to improve the show, any comments, compliments, or simply to gush about the legend that is Nicolas Kim Coppola. In our next episode, Nicholas goes toe-to-toe with the one and only Willem Dafoe in the 2016 black comedy action thriller Dog Eat Dog. 3 ex-cons are hired by a mob boss to kidnap a baby and hold it for ransom, but when things go awry, they find themselves on the run from both the cops and the mob. Fun fact, Dog Eat Dog was coincidentally co-written and directed by Bringing Out the Dead screenwriter Paul Schrader.
Yes.
So it comes back again. So Nigel's really going to love this one.
Yeah.
It's going to be 10 out of 10.
I'm going to say this movie is all over the fucking place. It is.
I can't wait, dude.
Such a, just weird journey. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys.
I was really hoping you were going to say they're also running from the baby, but I'll take mobsters.
That little synopsis makes the movie sound a hell of a lot more jaunty and fun than it actually is.
And this knee slapper.
I mean, in the first fucking scene, I'm not gonna spoil it, but shit gets dark real quick.
I'm excited. This is one that's on our list that I've been waiting to, especially since we talked about him and William Dafoe teaming up in this movie.
Yeah, Dafoe he's great. A fucking lunatic psychopath. He is Mad Dog, so that's where the Dog Eat Dog comes from.
Nice.
I'm not gonna spoil it. I feel like I keep doing this where I keep coloring your opinions of the movies before we watch them. So I'm not gonna say anything. I just want to let you guys go into it cold, and then we'll talk about it. So make sure to check it out wherever fine films are sold, except for Crackle, or on the streaming service of your choice, except for Crackle. Until then, we'll say goodbye the way we do each and every episode with our Nicolas Cage quote of the film.
If you want your father to think you're not a silly fuck, don't slap a guy across the face with a glove.
Thanks for listening to One Cage at a Time. Visit us online at onecageatatime.com or follow us on the social media platform of your choice for more Nicolas Cage goodness. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you really like the show, become a member of our Patreon where you can download unedited and ad-free episodes as well as listen to our follow-up show, Back Into the Cage, where we re-examine each movie to discuss what we missed the first time around, answer listener questions, and wax poetic about the man, the myth, the legend that is Nicolas Cage.
Weatherman!